Three professional killers, one billionaire CEO, zero security. It should have been a massacre at Meridian Restaurant. Instead, a man in a server's uniform emerged from the shadows and did the impossible. In 4 seconds, three bodies hit the floor. The security footage has 40 million views. But the real story isn't the fight, it's what happened when the CEO's assistant looked into the hero's eyes. The footage plays in stark black and white, its clinical clarity capturing the moment that would change multiple lives forever. A crowded Manhattan restaurant, chandeliers casting prismatic light across white tablecloths. Jonathan Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Industries, is seated at his regular corner table, entertaining Japanese investors. His posture is relaxed, confident, a man accustomed to power. The three men enter with practiced efficiency. They move with the coordinated purpose of a pack, and Jonathan's mind, always calculating odds and exits, recognizes the danger a half-second before the first fist flies toward his face. The attack unfolds with choreographed violence, as if rehearsed in empty warehouses and darkened lots. The first attacker, broad-shouldered with a spider-web tattoo creeping up his neck, grabs Jonathan by his Italian silk lapels and yanks him from his chair, sending aged whiskey cascading across white linen. The second man, leaner but faster, drives a knee toward Jonathan's ribs, while the third circles behind, cutting off escape routes with the patience of someone who has done this before. Claire Wilson, seated to Jonathan's left, finds herself shoved backward, her chair toppling as her hands instinctively reach for Jonathan, even as physics and momentum carry her away from him. The Japanese investors scramble backward, one elderly gentleman falling hard against marble, his glasses skittering across the floor like frightened insects. Screams erupt from nearby tables as diners abandon $1,000 meals, designer heels clicking frantically toward exits that suddenly seem impossibly distant. Ethan Morgan had been transferring clean glasses from the service suite when peripheral motion triggered instincts that 5 years of civilian life hadn't managed to bury. His body moves before conscious thought, engaging the kind of muscle memory that lives in bone and sinew rather than mind. The first attacker never sees him coming. Ethan's palm strike connects with the man's solar plexus with precise force needed to drop without killing, followed by an elbow to the temple that guarantees unconsciousness without permanent damage. The second attacker manages to throw a wild haymaker that would have been devastating had it connected with anything except air. Ethan slips inside the arc, his hands finding pressure points with medical precision, and the man crumples like a marionette with severed strings. The third man reaches for something inside his jacket, knife or gun. It doesn't matter because Ethan's foot sweeps his legs while simultaneously controlling the weapon arm, a move practiced 10,000 times in dust, in mud, in blood. The man's head meets marble with a sound like a dropped melon, and then silence descends except for the crystalline tinkle of a still spinning wine glass and Claire's sharp intake of breath. Police sirens wail through Manhattan streets while Ethan stands among three unconscious bodies, his breathing barely elevated, his shirt still tucked, looking for all the world like a man waiting for a bus rather than someone who has just prevented an execution. The responding officers approach him with the wary respect reserved for dangerous things temporarily allied with their purpose. He answers their questions with military brevity. Yes, he intervened. No, he didn't know the attackers. Yes, he was uninjured. While his mind calculates the media attention this would generate and what it might mean for Emma. When reporters burst through the doors, he turns his back to their cameras and requests to give his statement away from the crowd. Claire watches him navigate the chaos with fascinating calm, noting how he positions himself to keep exits visible, how his hands never quite relax even as he projects perfect control. Jonathan, holding a cloth napkin to a split lip, keeps staring at Ethan like he's trying to solve an equation that shouldn't exist. This man who moves like special forces but dresses like service staff, who saved his life, then tried to vanish into the background as if heroism was something to be ashamed of. When the detective finally releases him, Ethan slips out through the kitchen exit, but not before Claire memorizes the way he walks. Controlled, purposeful, carrying invisible weight. The video surfaces online within 3 hours, shot on someone's phone from behind an overturned table, showing only Ethan's back and the fluid destruction he visited upon three larger men. By morning, it has 7 million views and climbing. Ethan Morgan carried himself like a man trying to disappear into his own shadow. Though at 6'2", with shoulders that still bore the unmistakable architecture of military conditioning, true invisibility remained forever out of reach. 34 years had carved lines around eyes that had seen too much. Eyes that now spent most of their time watching an 8-year-old girl named Emma master multiplication tables and negotiate extra bedtime stories. His hands, which once assembled rifles in pitch darkness and steadied ropes on midnight insertions, now wielded industrial dishwashers and silver polish in the back rooms of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant. The transition from Navy SEAL Team 6 to single father had been neither gradual nor voluntary. It had been torn from him the day cancer stole Sarah from their small apartment, leaving him with a daughter who had her mother's golden hair and his own stubborn chin. He works nights when Emma stays with Mrs. Rivera next door, an arrangement that allows him to walk her to school each morning and help with homework each afternoon. The restaurant job pays enough to keep them in their Queens apartment, far from his former life's cow, far from questions he never wanted to answer. His supervisor knows him as quiet, reliable Ethan, who never misses shifts and never complains about staying late. The waitstaff barely notices him at all, which is exactly how he prefers it. Every movement Ethan makes is economical, precise, the result of years of training to survive in environments where a single misstep means death. He still sits with his back to the wall, still scans rooms upon entering, still maintains situational awareness that most civilians never develop. These habits aren't conscious choices anymore. They're as automatic as breathing. At home, though, Ethan becomes someone else. The hypervigilance recedes just enough to allow smiles when Emma shows him artwork or tells him about school. He keeps his memories of distant deserts and midnight raids locked away, presenting his daughter with a father who is present, engaged, and determined to give her stability despite everything they have lost. Emma notices more than he realizes. She sees how he flinches at sudden noises, how he sometimes stares out windows at nothing in particular, how his eyes track strangers who approach them in the park. One evening, as he tucks her into bed, she places a small hand on his cheek. "Daddy, why do you always watch everyone so carefully?" The question catches him off guard, makes him realize his vigilance isn't as invisible as he'd hoped. He considers lying, offering some simple explanation that an 8-year-old might accept. But Sarah had made him promise never to lie to their daughter. "There are some things I can't stop doing even when I want to," he says, finally smoothing her blanket. "It's like how you can't stop loving me." She accepts this with the solemn nod of a child who understands more than adults think. "Is it because you were a soldier?" Another question that pierces straight through his defenses. "How did you know that? I saw your picture once in the box under your bed. You were wearing different clothes and you looked different." She hesitates, searching for the right word. "Harder." He kisses her forehead, buying time to compose his thoughts. "I was different then, but that was before Mom got sick. Now I'm just your dad." Emma studies his face with Sarah's thoughtful eyes. "You can be both, you know. Mom used to say people contain multitudes." The quote, Sarah's favorite Whitman line, brings an unexpected lump to his throat. "Your mom was very wise. She also said you were the bravest man she ever met." Emma yawns, settling deeper into her pillows. "Not because you weren't afraid, but because you did the right thing even when you were scared." Ethan sits with her until she falls asleep, wondering how much of Sarah lives on in their daughter's perceptive mind, wondering if he's been fooling himself, thinking he could bury his past completely. 3 years earlier, the hospital room had smelled of antiseptic and dying flowers. Sarah, once vibrant and quick to laugh, had been reduced to hollow cheeks and papery skin. The cancer had moved with military efficiency, claiming territory in her body despite the chemical warfare of treatments. "Promise me," she had whispered, her voice scraped raw from vomiting her hand fragile in his calloused palm. "Promise me you'll give up the teams. Emma needs at least one parent who makes it home every night." He had promised without hesitation, already mentally composing his resignation. He'd served his country for 12 years, surviving missions that had claimed better men. He could serve his family now. In Ethan, Sarah's eyes had found focus through the morphine haze. "Don't disappear when I'm gone. Emma will need you present, really present. Not just your body in the room while your mind is back in some classified hell." That promise had been harder to make. He had spent years compartmentalizing, walling off emotion, learning to function in conditions designed to break most humans. How did you unlearn that to become the emotionally available father a little girl needed? But he had promised anyway. And when Sarah slipped away 2 weeks later, he had held Emma through her tears while containing his own, already beginning the work of rebuilding himself into something he had never been trained to be: a civilian, a single parent, a man without a mission beyond making school lunches and checking homework. The resignation from the Navy had been accepted with reluctance. His commanding officer had offered alternatives: training positions, reduced deployment schedules. But Ethan had been resolute. Emma needed consistency, needed to know with absolute certainty that her remaining parent would come home every night. So he had traded tactical gear for kitchen, White's mission briefs for staff meetings, the brotherhood of his team for the solitary work of rebuilding a life from scratch. The restaurant job had come through a fellow SEAL who had married into restaurant ownership, one of the few connections to his old life that Ethan maintained. The work suited him, structured, demanding physical precision, requiring attention to detail, without the life or death consequences that had defined his previous career. And if he sometimes found himself scanning the dining room for threats or planning extraction routes while polishing silverware, well, old habits died hard. Claire Wilson moved through the corporate world like a blade through silk, smooth, precise, leaving barely a ripple in her wake. At 33, she had mastered the art of being indispensable while remaining largely invisible, the kind of woman who could defuse $1 billion lawsuit with a phone call, but whom security guards still occasionally asked for identification. Her wardrobe consisted entirely of colors that whispered rather than shouted: charcoal, navy, pearl, and she wore her dark hair in a style that suggested authority without demanding attention. Behind her composure lay a childhood spent watching her mother work 3 jobs after her father's heart gave out when she was 7, experiences that taught her to value security above romance, stability above adventure. She had tried love once with a Wall Street lawyer named Daniel, who promised her everything and delivered nothing except a broken engagement and the realization that she functioned better alone. Now she channeled all that unused tenderness into managing Jonathan Blackwood's impossible schedule and impossible moods, organizing his life with the devotion of a curator tending priceless art. Her apartment on the Upper East Side contained exactly 3 personal photographs and 17 books about leadership, though she secretly downloaded romance novels onto her tablet late at night when the city lights looked particularly lonely through her floor-to-ceiling windows. Jonathan Blackwood commanded boardrooms the way generals commanded armies, though lately he found victories tasted more like ash than champagne. At 45, he had built Blackwood Industries from his father's failing textile company into a multinational corporation worth $12 billion. But success had cost him 2 marriages and any relationship with his younger brother, who had committed suicide while Jonathan closed a merger in Tokyo. He treated human connections like hostile takeovers, something to be won or lost, never simply experienced. Only Claire seemed to understand the peculiar rhythm of his loneliness, bringing him coffee exactly 4 minutes before he realized he needed it, scheduling his days to include brief moments of solitude between conquests. He occupied the corner table at Meridian every Thursday evening, using dinner meetings as fortification against the empty penthouse that awaited him. Tonight's dinner with Japanese investors was supposed to secure funding for Southeast Asian expansion, another victory to stack upon victories that had long since ceased to matter. Emma discovers the viral video of her father during lunch at school when her friend Zoe shows her the screen of a smuggled smartphone. "Isn't this where your dad works?" Zoe asks, and Emma's world tilts on its axis as she watches the familiar form of her father move with lethal precision through 3 larger men. The video has 40 million views and a hashtag Meridian Hero. Comments speculate about military training, martial arts backgrounds, superhero origins. Emma watches it 7 times before the lunch bell rings, seeing her quiet, careful father transformed into something dangerous and magnificent. When she comes home that afternoon, her backpack clutched tight against her chest, her eyes shining with pride and confusion, Ethan's heart nearly stops. "Dad, is this you?" she asks, holding up her friend's tablet with small hands that tremble slightly. He kneels to her level, brushing golden hair from her face, and tells her, yes, it was him, but it was nothing special, just helping someone who needed help, the way they helped Mrs. Rivera with her groceries. She hugs him, then fierce and sudden whispering, "I knew you were a superhero." And he holds her while something inside his chest cracks like ice in spring. Later, after she's asleep, he sits on the fire escape outside their apartment, watching Queens pretend to be Manhattan across the river. He should have been more careful, should have found another way to handle the situation without revealing his capabilities so publicly. The whole point of the past 5 years has been to disappear, to become unremarkable, to build a life where Emma never has to worry about her father's past reaching out with violent hands. Now his face, or at least his back, is all over the internet. Someone will recognize him eventually. Former teammates perhaps, or enemies made during classified operations whose details will never see the light of day. The carefully constructed wall between Ethan Morgan dishwasher and single father and Lieutenant Ethan Morgan Navy SEAL has been breached. He's still sitting there when headlights sweep across the building and a black town car pulls to the curb below. A woman emerges, her silhouette familiar even in the dim streetlight. Claire Wilson, Jonathan Blackwood's assistant, looking up at fire escapes until she spots him. Mr. Morgan, she calls, her voice carrying just enough to reach him without disturbing neighbors. May I speak with you? He considers pretending he hasn't heard, considers retreating into his apartment and locking the door. But curiosity wins out. How did she find his address? What could Jonathan Blackwood possibly want with him now that the police statements have been given? Wait there, he says, and descends the metal stairs with silent efficiency. Claire Wilson looks different outside the restaurant chaos. More human somehow, though still impeccably dressed in a navy pantsuit that probably cost more than 3 months of Ethan's rent. She carries a leather portfolio and wears a Cartier watch that catches the streetlight when she extends her hand. Thank you for seeing me, she says, as if he'd had a choice. Mr. Blackwood would like to speak with you. I've given my statement to the police, Ethan replies, already calculating exit strategies. There's nothing more to discuss. He's prepared to compensate you generously for your discretion. Claire continues, unfazed by his reluctance, and for a private consultation. I'm not for hire. Claire's professional mask slips just slightly, revealing genuine curiosity. You saved his life without hesitation, Mr. Morgan. Most people would at least want to know what that's worth. Most people haven't promised their daughter a normal life. The words escape before he can reconsider them, revealing more than he intended. Claire studies him with new interest, taking in his faded jeans and t-shirt, the modest apartment building behind him, the wedding ring he still wears 3 years after Sarah's death. Your daughter, she's the reason you work at Meridian. The hours let you be home when she needs you. It's not a question, but he nods anyway, surprised by her perception. Just 10 minutes of your time, Claire presses gently. Tomorrow morning at Blackwood Tower. Your daughter will be in school, I assume. The presumption irritates him, but she's right. Emma's school day starts at 8:30. 9 o'clock, he concedes finally. 10 minutes and no more. Claire smiles, a genuine expression that transforms her professional demeanor into something warmer. I'll send a car. I'll take the subway, he counters, unwilling to be further indebted to Jonathan Blackwood. As you wish. She hands him a business card with the Blackwood Industries logo embossed in silver. Ask for me at reception. He watches her return to the waiting car, wondering what he's just agreed to, wondering if he's already compromised the careful separation between past and present that he's maintained for Emma's sake. The next morning, after dropping Emma at school with extra tight hugs and promises of pizza for dinner, Ethan stands before his closet contemplating appropriate attire for meeting a billionaire. His options are limited: the black pants and white shirt from his restaurant uniform, jeans in various states of wear, and a single navy suit purchased for Sarah's funeral that he hasn't worn since. The suit feels like both armor and surrender as he puts it on the fabric, still holding a ghost of the cedar blocks he'd stored it with. He leaves the tie, and he saw him. Some battles aren't worth fighting, and he knows his limitations when it comes to proper Windsor knots. Blackwood Tower rises 60 stories above Midtown, a monument to ambition rendered in glass and steel. The lobby alone occupies more square footage than Ethan's entire apartment building, all marble and modern art installations that probably cost more than his yearly salary. Security is visible but not overwhelming. Uniformed guards at the entrance, badge readers at turnstiles, cameras discreetly monitoring from recessed ceiling fixtures. Ethan notes 2 plainclothes security personnel trying to look inconspicuous near the elevator banks. Amateurs. Their posture and alertness levels mark them as clearly as if they wore signs. At reception, he gives Claire's name and is immediately issued a visitor badge, then escorted to a private elevator that requires keycard access. The young woman accompanying him keeps sneaking glances when she thinks he isn't looking. "You're him, aren't you?" she finally asks as the elevator ascends. "The guy from the restaurant, the one who took out those attackers." Ethan offers a non-committal smile, neither confirming nor denying, and is saved from further questioning when the elevator doors open directly into an executive suite on the 60th floor. Claire Wilson waits there, elegant, in a charcoal-sheathed dress, her tablet clutched like a shield against her chest. "Mr. Morgan, thank you for coming. Mr. Blackwood is ready for you." She leads him through a series of increasingly opulent spaces. An outer reception area, a conference room with views of Central Park, finally arriving at double doors of what appears to be walnut polished to a mirror shine. Jonathan Blackwood's office resembles the bridge of a starship more than a traditional workspace. Floor-to-ceiling windows providing a godlike view of Manhattan, a desk the size of a small boat, minimalist furniture that probably costs more than most cars. The man himself stands with his back to the door, hands clasped behind him, surveying his domain from 60 stories up. "Mr. Morgan," he says without turning. "You're prompt. Military habit. Courtesy," Ethan corrects, remaining near the door while Claire takes a position to the side tablet, ready the perfect executive shadow. Jonathan turns, then revealing a face more lined than it appears in news photographs. Eyes sharp with intelligence, and something harder to define. Hunger, perhaps, or the peculiar loneliness of men who have clawed their way to positions where everyone wants something from them. "You saved my life," Jonathan states, moving to his desk but not sitting. "Why Bashle?" The question catches Ethan off guard. He'd expected gratitude, perhaps an oversized check, not philosophical inquiry. "Instinct," he answers honestly. "I saw a threat and neutralized it." "Military training. Does it matter?" Jonathan smiles thinly. "It might, depending on what I'm about to offer you." He gestures to chairs arranged near his desk, an invitation Ethan reluctantly accepts. Claire remains standing, her posture perfect, her eyes missing nothing. "Those men were professionals," Jonathan continues once Ethan is seated. "Not random thugs. Someone wanted me dead and hired quality talent to make it happen. My security team failed spectacularly, and you, a dishwasher, succeeded. That interests me greatly." Ethan says nothing, waiting for the point. "I'd like to hire you, Mr. Morgan, as a security consultant initially, with the potential for a permanent position heading my personal detail." "I'm not interested." Jonathan looks genuinely surprised, as if rejection is a foreign concept he's encountering for the first time. "I haven't mentioned compensation yet. It doesn't matter. I have a job." "Washing dishes," Jonathan says, incredulity sharpening his tone. "For what, $15 an hour, I'm prepared to offer six figures, Mr. Morgan, with benefits, stock options, and a schedule that accommodates your daughter's needs." Ethan's jaw tightens at the mention of Emma. "You've been investigating me." "Of course I have. You think I'd invite a stranger into my office without due diligence? You're Ethan Morgan, 34, former Navy SEAL, served with distinction in classified operations in the Middle East and North Africa. Honorably discharged 5 years ago when your wife was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. Widowed 3 years ago, raising an 8-year-old daughter alone. Working below your capabilities because the hours let you be home when she needs you." Each detail lands like a physical blow. Ethan rises from his chair, the anger tightening his shoulders. "We're done here." "Everyone has a price, Morgan." Jonathan persists, standing as well. "Name yours." "My daughter needs a father who comes home every night, not a security chief who might take a bullet for a billionaire," Ethan says, moving toward the door. "No amount of money changes that. I can provide the best education for your daughter, the best healthcare opportunities most single fathers could only dream of offering their children." Ethan pauses at the door, turns back with a steady gaze. "My daughter needs me alive more than she needs privilege. Thank you for your time, Mr. Blackwood." He leaves without waiting for a response, aware of Claire's eyes following him, aware that he's just refused an offer that could have transformed Emma's future in material terms. But Sarah hadn't asked him to provide Emma with wealth. She'd asked him to provide presence, stability, the certainty of a parent who would always come home. In the elevator descending to the lobby, he loosens his tie and tries to shake the feeling that he's just made a powerful enemy. Jonathan Blackwood doesn't strike him as a man accustomed to hearing no. What Ethan doesn't see is what happens after he leaves. How Jonathan turns to Claire with genuine confusion, how he paces the length of his office trying to process the rejection. Double the offer, he instructs finally, and find out what school his daughter attends. I'll endow a scholarship fund. Claire, who has been watching this with increasing discomfort, closes her tablet with unusual firmness. Sir, with respect, I don't think money is the right approach with Mr. Morgan. Money is always the right approach, Claire. It's just a matter of finding the correct amount. He declined your offer because he prioritizes his daughter's emotional needs over material advantages, Claire says carefully. Attempting to circumvent that through her school would likely alienate him further. Jonathan stops pacing, studies his assistant with new awareness. You admire him. Claire maintains her professional composure, but a faint color touches her cheeks. I admire his priorities, yes. He's living in a two-bedroom walk-up in Queens, working as a dishwasher, raising a child alone. Those aren't priorities, Claire. That's survival mode. With respect, sir, you've never had children. Some would say Mr. Morgan has his priorities exactly right. The observation silences Jonathan momentarily. When he speaks again, his voice carries an unfamiliar note, something almost like vulnerability. Someone sent professionals to kill me, Claire. The kind that don't stop until they succeed. I need Morgan's skills. Find a way to convince him. Claire nods, already formulating approaches that might appeal to the former SEAL's sense of duty rather than greed. I'll try a different angle, sir. As she leaves Jonathan's office, she finds herself thinking of Ethan Morgan's steady gaze, the way he moved with such controlled precision, the wedding ring he still wore years after his wife's death. A man of principle in a world increasingly devoid of them. She wonders what it would take to convince such a man to step back into the dangerous world he'd left behind, and whether she should be the one to try. Ethan Morgan walks away from Blackwood Tower with his dignity intact, but his mind troubled. He'd rejected a life-changing sum of money on principle, but principles don't help pay for Emma's college fund or the medical bills still lingering from Sarah's treatment. As he descends into the subway, the contrast between the gleaming corporate tower and the gritty underground passageway mirrors his own internal conflict. The polished Navy SEAL and the struggling single father, two identities at war within one man. His phone vibrates with a text from Mrs. Rivera, confirming she'll pick Emma up from her after-school program. He has just enough time to change before his shift at Meridian. The restaurant manager had left 3 voicemails since the incident, each more urgent than the last, but Ethan had avoided returning them. Tonight would require facing whatever consequences awaited. The autumn afternoon light casts long shadows across the restaurant's empty dining room as Ethan enters through the service entrance. The manager, Paolo, intercepts him before he can reach the locker room. Morgan, Paolo says, his Italian accent thickening with emotion. My office, please. Ethan follows, preparing for termination. Drawing attention to the restaurant through violence, justified or not, violated every unwritten rule of high-end service. Paolo closes the door behind them and studies Ethan with new eyes. 3 years you work here. Never late, never complain, never break a dish. I think I know you, but I know nothing. I just did what anyone would do. Ethan offers the lie, sitting uncomfortably between them. No. Paolo shakes his head emphatically. What you did most people cannot do. Military, Ethan nods once, seeing no point in denial. Special forces? Paolo continues, not a question. My cousin was Italian Special Forces. I recognize the eyes. He sighs deeply. Customers are calling for reservations, asking if the hero will be working. Press keep coming by. Mr. Blackwood's office has called 5 times. I understand if you need to let me go. Paolo looks genuinely startled. Let you go? No, I promote you. Head of security. Now it's Ethan's turn to be surprised. I'm not looking for a promotion. I just want to keep my current schedule. For my daughter. Same schedule, more money, Paolo counters. You wash dishes, but also you watch dining room. Make sure no more bad men come in. Simple. It's not what Ethan wants. Any position that draws attention contradicts his goal of anonymity, but it's better than unemployment. I appreciate that, Paolo. Good. Start tonight. And Ethan, Paolo adds as he turns to leave. Thank you for saving my restaurant's most important customer. The shift passes without incident, though Ethan notices more eyes following him than before. The waitstaff treat him differently, with a cautious respect that makes him uncomfortable. By closing time, he's exhausted from the constant vigilance from balancing dishwashing duties with covert surveillance of the dining room. He's wiping down the last of the industrial sinks when a movement at the kitchen entrance catches his attention. Claire Wilson stands there looking somehow both out of place and perfectly composed in her designer suit amidst the stainless steel and cleaning chemicals. "Mr. Morgan," she says, her voice carrying easily in the near-empty kitchen. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "It's almost midnight, Ms. Wilson," he replies, continuing his work. "Most people would consider that disturbing hours." A faint smile touches her lips. "I've never worked conventional hours. May I speak with you? It won't take long." Ethan gestures to the preparation table, the only clean surface available. Claire hesitates briefly before perching on a stool, careful to keep her tailored slacks from touching anything damp. "Mr. Blackwood was disappointed by your decision this morning," she begins. "But not surprised," Ethan finishes for her. "Actually quite surprised. He's not accustomed to rejection." That sounds like a personal problem. Claire's professional mask slips for just a moment, revealing genuine amusement. "Perhaps, but his security concerns are very real. The men who attacked him weren't random criminals. They were professionals, likely hired by someone with a grudge. The police will handle it. The police are looking for street-level hitmen, not the person who commissioned the attack." Claire leans forward slightly. "I've been researching Mr. Blackwood's recent business dealings. 6 months ago, Blackwood Industries acquired Wallace Corporation in a hostile takeover. The founder, Charles Wallace, lost everything. 2 weeks later, he committed suicide." This catches Ethan's attention despite himself. Family, a wife, Susan, and a 19-year-old son, Michael, who dropped out of college after his father's death and has been treated for severe depression. Claire pauses, letting the information settle. The attackers had connections to private military contractors. One had previously worked security for Wallace. Ethan finishes wiping down the sink, buying time to process this new information. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because there will be another attempt," Claire says simply. "And next time they might not target Mr. Blackwood in a public place where a former SEAL happens to be washing dishes." "That's not my problem." "Isn't it?" Claire challenges quietly. "You intervened automatically at the restaurant. It's who you are, someone who protects others when you can. I'm not asking you to abandon your daughter or your principles. I'm asking you to consider a compromise." Ethan studies her, seeing beyond the polished exterior to something genuine in her concern. "What kind of compromise?" "Limited consulting. Review Mr. Blackwood's security protocols, identify vulnerabilities, recommend improvements. On your schedule, working around your daughter's needs. 3 days maximum, well compensated." It's reasonable, far more so than Jonathan's original offer. Still, Ethan hesitates. "Why are you pushing this so hard? It's not just professional loyalty." Claire's composure wavers briefly. "My father worked for a company that was acquired and dismantled when I was 6. He was laid off after 20 years, lost his pension. The stress triggered a heart attack that killed him a year later." She meets Ethan's gaze directly. "I don't want Michael Wallace to lose another parent because of corporate revenge. And I don't want Mr. Blackwood to become another casualty of a cycle he may not even fully understand." The honesty in her answer resonates more than any amount of money could have. 3 days, Ethan concedes finally, working around Emma's schedule, and I set the terms. The relief in Claire's smile is unmistakable. "Thank you. When can you start?" "Saturday. I need to arrange childcare first." "I'll send a car." "No," Ethan interrupts firmly. "I'll meet you at Blackwood Tower, 9 a.m. Claire accepts the boundary with a graceful nod. 9 it is, and Mr. Morgan. "Thank you." After she leaves, Ethan finishes closing the kitchen, his mind churning with possibilities and risks. He's stepping back into a world he deliberately left behind, if only peripherally. The question is whether he can maintain the boundary between past and present, between the skills that once defined him and the life he's built for Emma. The bookstore sits between Emma's school and their apartment, a refuge of worn wooden shelves and the comforting scent of paper and binding glue. Emma loves their Saturday morning ritual, breakfast at the diner on the corner, then an hour exploring new releases while Ethan reads the newspaper in one of the overstuffed chairs near the children's section. This Saturday, however, breaks tradition. Ethan has arranged for Mrs. Rivera to take Emma for the day, explaining he has an important meeting. Emma accepted this with the solemn understanding of a child accustomed to adult compromises, extracting only the promise of extra bedtime stories as compensation. Now, as he approaches Blackwood Tower for the second time, Ethan mentally prepares for the task ahead. Review security protocols, identify vulnerabilities, recommend improvements. Simple, contained, limited engagement. He repeats these parameters like a mantra as he passes through the lobby security checkpoint. Unlike his previous visit today, he's escorted not to Jonathan's office, but to a conference room several floors below. Claire waits there along with a hard-faced man in his 50s whose posture screams ex-military. "Mr. Morgan, thank you for coming." Claire greets him, professional but warm. "This is Frank Donovan, head of security for Blackwood Industries." Donovan doesn't offer his hand, just a curt nod and evaluating stare. "Morgan, Mr. Blackwood will join us shortly." Claire continues, gesturing toward the chairs surrounding a large table covered with floor plans and security schematics. "In the meantime, perhaps you could begin reviewing our current protocols." Ethan gets to work immediately, recognizing the documentation format from his military days. Blackwood's security setup is comprehensive but conventional. Access control surveillance systems, personal protection, details for high-level executives. What catches his attention are the gaps between systems, the assumptions that allow vulnerabilities to persist. He's making notes when Jonathan Blackwood enters, bringing with him the particular energy of men accustomed to commanding rooms. Today he wears casual clothes, designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably costs more than Ethan's monthly rent, but carries himself with the same imperial confidence. "Morgan, Ben," he acknowledges with a nod. "I appreciate your reconsideration." "I haven't reconsidered," Ethan corrects calmly. "I've agreed to a limited consultation, nothing more." Something like respect flickers in Jonathan's eyes. "Fair enough. What have you found so far?" 17 vulnerabilities, some minor, some critical. Ethan indicates the schematics. "Your security is designed to keep random threats out, not to protect against targeted attacks by professionals. You maintain predictable routes, predictable schedules. Your residential security assumes threats will come from outside, not from compromised personnel." Frank Donovan's face darkens. "My team is vetted extensively." "By whom?" Ethan challenges. "Using what criteria? The restaurant attackers had tactical training consistent with the private military contractors. That suggests someone with the access to that world is involved." "Have you screened your team for connections to Wallace Corporation or Charles Wallace specifically?" The question lands like a grenade in the center of the table. Jonathan's gaze snaps to Claire, who meets it steadily. "I briefed Mr. Morgan on the Wallace situation," she explains. "It seemed the most likely source of the threat. And you didn't think to clear that with me first." Jonathan's voice remains measured, but ice forms around the edges. "Time was a factor," Claire replies unflinching, "and you hired me for my judgment." The tension between them reveals a dynamic Ethan hadn't fully appreciated. Claire isn't merely an assistant, but a trusted advisor who occasionally pushes back against her boss's authority. "Interesting." "She's right," Ethan interjects, redirecting attention. "Whoever orchestrated the restaurant attack will try again. Next time they'll adapt to what failed before. You need to be prepared for escalation." The remainder of the meeting focuses on immediate security improvements, varying routes and schedules, enhanced vetting procedures for all personnel, upgraded residential security. Frank Donovan grows increasingly resentful as Ethan identifies flaws in his existing systems, but Jonathan absorbs each recommendation with calculating interest. By early afternoon, they've developed an implementation plan for the most critical changes. Jonathan seems genuinely impressed with Ethan's thoroughness, while Donovan barely conceals his hostility. "This is excellent work," Jonathan says as they conclude. "I'd like you to oversee the implementation." "That wasn't our agreement," Ethan reminds him. "Review, identify, recommend. 3 days maximum." Circumstances change. The threat level has clearly been underestimated. "My answer hasn't changed since our first meeting, Mr. Blackwood. My priority is my daughter." Jonathan studies him with the intensity of someone unaccustomed to puzzles he can't solve. "Bring her along," he suggests finally. "I have a penthouse with 6 bedrooms. You could both stay there during the implementation phase, completely secure with whatever childcare support you need." The offer is so wildly inappropriate that Ethan almost laughs. "You're suggesting I move my 8-year-old daughter into a stranger's home to help implement security protocols that your own head of security resents me for designing. Put that way, even Jonathan seems to recognize the absurdity. I'm trying to find a workable solution, Morgan, one that respects your priorities while addressing my security needs. The solution is to follow the recommendations I provided and let Frank's team implement them, Ethan says, gathering his notes. My part in this is done. Claire walks him to the elevator, her expression troubled. He means well, she offers as they wait for the car to arrive. He's just not accustomed to considering other people's circumstances. That's a diplomatic way of saying he's used to buying compliance, Ethan observes. Yes, she admits with surprising candor. But the threat is real, Mr. Morgan. I'm concerned about what happens next. The elevator arrives with a soft chime. Ethan steps inside, then holds the door. If you need further consultation, you know where to find me. But I won't be moving into anyone's penthouse, and I won't be leaving Emma with strangers. Claire nods understanding. As the doors begin to close, she adds, for what it's worth, I think Sarah would be proud of the boundaries you're maintaining for Emma's sake. The mention of his late wife's name stops Ethan cold, but the doors have already closed, carrying him downward and away from Claire's perceptive gaze. The bookstore is crowded with weekend customers when Ethan arrives seeking familiar comfort after the tension of Blackwood Tower. He has a few hours before picking up Emma from Mrs. Rivera's apartment, and the thought of returning to their empty home holds little appeal. Better to lose himself among shelves of stories where problems resolve in predictable arcs and heroes always know the right path forward. He's browsing the military history section when a flash of movement catches his peripheral vision, a familiar figure in the children's area. Claire Wilson stands examining a display of new releases, looking strangely out of place in her casual weekend attire of jeans and a simple sweater. Without her power suit and corporate backdrop, she appears younger, more approachable. Ethan considers slipping away unnoticed, but something, curiosity perhaps, or the strange coincidence, propels him toward her instead. Ms. Wilson, he says, approaching with deliberate noise to avoid startling her. Quite a coincidence. She turns surprise, registering briefly before she composes herself. Mr. Morgan, I didn't expect. This isn't near your neighborhood, is it? My daughter loves this store. We come most Saturdays. Claire glances around as if expecting to see Emma appear. Is she here now? With a neighbor today. I had a meeting at Blackwood Tower, if you recall. A faint blush touches Claire's cheeks. Of course, I didn't mean to imply. That is, I wasn't following you if that's what you're thinking. I live 6 blocks from here. The idea hadn't occurred to him, but her defensive response is intriguing. I wasn't thinking that. Just surprised to see you somewhere so ordinary. Because corporate robots don't read books. There's a hint of genuine hurt beneath her attempt at lightness. Because I assumed your Saturdays would involve charity galas or networking brunches, not browsing paperbacks. Claire relaxes slightly. I save those for Sundays, she says, and he's startled to realize she's making a joke. Saturdays are for pretending I have a normal life with normal hobbies. Like reading, she holds up the book in her hands. A middle-grade novel about a girl detective. My guilty pleasure. Young adult fiction. The problems are solvable, the villains are clear-cut, and good usually triumphs. Usually, but the best ones have ambiguity, she admits. Like real life. Before Ethan can respond, a small voice calls out from behind him. Dad. He turns to find Emma rushing toward him, golden hair flying, Mrs. Rivera following at a more sedate pace. Emma, what are you doing here? He kneels to catch her in a hug, breathing in the scent of strawberry shampoo and the faint chocolate that seems to perpetually cling to her, regardless of what she's eaten. Mrs. Rivera had to come to the pharmacy next door for her prescription, and I told her you always bring me here on Saturdays, so she said we could look for you. Emma's explanation tumbles out in a rush before her attention shifts to Claire. Who's this? This is Ms. Wilson, Ethan says, straightening. She works with the man I met today. Emma studies Claire with frank curiosity. You're pretty. Are you Dad's friend? Claire crouches to Emma's level, a natural gesture that surprises Ethan. I'm getting to know your dad through work, she says, offering her hand with the same respect she'd show an adult. I'm Claire. Emma shakes the offered hand solemnly. I'm Emma Morgan. I'm 8 3/4. Very pleased to meet you, Emma Morgan. who is 8 3/4. That's a very important age. That's what Dad says, too. He says 8 is when you start figuring out who you really are. Claire glances up at Ethan, something soft and approving in her expression. Your dad sounds very wise. He is, Emma agrees matter-of-factly. He knows everything important, and he can beat up bad guys. Ethan winces internally at this reference to the restaurant incident, but Claire handles it smoothly. Knowing what's important is a rare skill, she says. You're lucky to have each other. Mrs. Rivera approaches, then apologizing for the interruption. Emma insisted we check if you were here, she explains. I can take her back home if you're still busy. No need, Ethan assures her. I'm finished for the day. Thank you for watching her. As Mrs. Rivera leaves, Emma tugs at Ethan's hand. Can we look at the new books now? I finished the one about the girl with the dragon last night. Of course, sweetheart. Just give me a moment. He turns back to Claire, who has risen and is watching their interaction with an expression he can't quite decipher. It was unexpected seeing you here, Miss Wilson. Claire, please, she corrects gently. And likewise, enjoy your Saturday with Emma. She begins to move away, but Emma calls after her. Do you want to help me pick a book? It always says I should get different perspectives. Claire hesitates, looking to Ethan for guidance. He should say no, should maintain the boundary between his work and personal life. But Emma is looking up at him with hopeful eyes, and there's something about Claire's uncertain expression that suggests she rarely receives such straightforward invitations. If Ms. Wilson Claire has time, he concedes, and wants to. I'd like that, Claire says with a smile that transforms her professional demeanor into something warmer and more genuine. I have excellent taste in books about dragons. The three of them navigate to the children's section, where Emma immediately begins pulling volumes from shelves and explaining her complex criteria for selection. Claire listens with serious attention, asking thoughtful questions that reveal she actually does read a considerable amount of children's literature. Watching them, Ethan feels an unexpected pang. This is what family outings should look like. Emma interacting with a caring female presence, receiving the kind of gentle guidance that he tries to provide, but knows must be different coming from a woman. Sarah should be here helping their daughter choose books, laughing at Emma's dramatic retellings of stories she's loved. The familiar grief rises, but alongside it comes a new sensation, a reluctant appreciation for Claire Wilson, who has somehow slipped past his defenses by treating his daughter with genuine respect. Your book collection is going to exceed our shelf space soon, he comments as Emma adds a third selection to her growing pile. We need more shelves then, Emma replies with the 8-year-old logic. You could build some. You built the ones in my room. Claire looks at him with new interest. You build furniture. Basic carpentry. He downplays. Nothing fancy. Dad can make anything, Emma contradicts proudly. He built my bed and my bookcase and fixed Mrs. Rivera's table when the leg broke. Mom used to say he could build a house from scratch if he needed to. The casual mention of Sarah doesn't sting as much as it might have once coming as it does wrapped in Emma's obvious pride. That's an impressive skill, Claire says, much more useful than analyzing spreadsheets, which is about the extent of my practical abilities. Dad says everyone has different skills that make the world work, Emma informs her seriously. Like he can build things and keep people safe, and I'm good at reading and science, and maybe you're good at… What are you good at? The directness of the question seems to catch Claire off guard. I suppose I'm good at organizing things and solving problems, helping people communicate effectively. Emma nods satisfied. See, everyone has important things they can do. As they approach the register with Emma's selections, Ethan's phone buzzes with an incoming call. He doesn't recognize the number, but steps aside to answer, while Claire helps Emma arrange her books on the counter. Morgan, he answers. There's been another attempt. Jonathan Blackwood's voice comes through without preamble. More sophisticated this time. A sniper. If I hadn't been in the bathroom when the shot came through my office window, I'd be dead. Ethan's body tenses, automatically scanning exits and sightlines even as he processes this information. Police, on scene now, but the shooter left a message carved into the roof access door. This isn't over. Jonathan's voice holds the unfamiliar texture of genuine fear. I need your help, Morgan. Not just consultation, real protection. But Ethan watches Emma chatting animatedly with Claire, her face bright with the simple joy of new books and adult attention. Everything in him resists stepping back into a world of violence and danger, resists risking the stable life he's built for his daughter. "Morgan, are you there?" "I'm here," he says finally, "but my answer hasn't changed. My daughter comes first." "Then bring her," Jonathan insists, desperation edging his voice. "My Hamptons estate has guest houses, security, everything you'd need. She'd be safer there than in Queens with a killer targeting people connected to me." "What do you mean, people connected to me?" Jonathan's pause speaks volumes. "Claire's apartment was broken into while she was at the office yesterday. Nothing taken, but someone went through her personal files. And Frank Donovan's car was run off the road last night. They're saying it was a drunk driver, but the timing." The implications crystallize instantly. Anyone associated with Jonathan Blackwood might now be a target, including Ethan himself and by extension, Emma. His mind races through scenarios, contingencies, threat assessments. The restaurant video has connected him publicly to Blackwood. If someone is watching, they might already know about Emma. "I'll help," he says finally, the words feeling like surrender and determination simultaneously. "But we do this my way. I set the terms, the boundaries, the protocols. Emma's safety is non-negotiable." "Anything you need," Jonathan agrees immediately. "When can you start?" Ethan watches Claire laugh at something Emma has said, the two of them forming an unexpected tableau of normalcy in the midst of escalating danger. "Tonight," he decides, "we'll need secure transportation to your Hamptons property. And Jonathan, if anything happens to my daughter because of this, there won't be a place on earth where you can hide from me." The threat isn't delivered with heat or emphasis, just the calm certainty of a man stating an absolute truth. In the silence that follows, he knows Jonathan understands perfectly. "I'll send a car at 7, Jonathan says finally. "Claire will coordinate the details." Ethan ends the call and returns to Emma and Claire, his decision already settling into the familiar weight of mission parameters and acceptable risks. He's stepping back into his old world, but this time with everything that matters at stake. "Everything okay, Dad?" Emma asks, sensitive as always to shifts in his mood. "Just fine, sweetheart," he assures her, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "But we need to talk about a change of plans. How would you feel about a little trip to the beach?" As Emma's face lights up with excitement, Ethan meets Claire's questioning gaze over his daughter's head. The brief shake of his head communicates enough. Something has happened, something serious enough to change his mind. Her slight nod acknowledges understanding and something more, support perhaps, or recognition of the sacrifice his decision represents. Whatever comes next, Ethan knows he's crossed a line he'd promised himself he never would. The question now is whether he can protect what matters most while navigating a world he deliberately left behind. A world where the skills that make him valuable are the same ones that once threatened to consume his humanity. The black SUV arrives precisely at 7, its tinted windows reflecting the streetlights of Queens as Ethan helps Emma into the back seat. She clutches her backpack stuffed with books, favorite pajamas, and Mr. Whiskers, the stuffed cat that has survived 3 years of nightly hugs since Sarah's passing. Ethan carries one duffel bag containing their clothes and another heavier bag that he places carefully in the trunk. "Is this like a vacation, Dad?" Mom asks as the vehicle pulls away from their apartment building. "Something like that," Ethan replies, his eyes constantly scanning the street while looking for signs of surveillance or pursuit. "Mr. Blackwood has a house near the beach. We'll be staying there for a little while." Because of the bad men from the restaurant, Emma's perception continues to surprise him, though it shouldn't. She's always been unusually intuitive, catching undercurrents that other children might miss. Ethan considers his response carefully, balancing honesty with the need to protect her from unnecessary fear. "Partly, Mr. Blackwood needs some help with security, and it's easier if we stay at his place while I'm working." Emma accepts this with a thoughtful nod. "Will Miss Claire be there too?" The question catches Ethan off guard. "Why do you ask?" "I like her. She doesn't talk to me like I'm a baby, and she has good taste in books." Emma looks up at him with Sarah's eyes perceptive and direct. "And you smiled when you were talking to her. You don't smile that way with most people." Ethan feels an unexpected warmth in his chest, part embarrassment, part something he's not ready to name. "Yes, Miss Claire will be there. She works for Mr. Blackwood." Good, Emma says decisively, returning her attention to the passing cityscape. She makes you less sad. The simple observation lands with surprising weight. Has he been so transparent? Does his daughter see his loneliness as clearly as she sees everything else? Before he can formulate a response, Emma has moved on, pointing out interesting buildings and asking about the Hamptons, her resilient child's mind already embracing the adventure ahead. The drive takes nearly 2 hours, the city giving way to suburbs, and finally to the exclusive enclaves of Long Island's eastern shore. When they finally turn down a private road, Emma's face presses against the window, taking in the massive iron gates that swing open at their approach and the sprawling estate beyond. It's like a castle, she whispers, as Blackwood's mansion comes into view, a modern interpretation of a coastal estate with walls of glass facing the Atlantic and multiple wings spreading across manicured grounds. A very expensive castle, Ethan murmurs, his tactical mind already cataloging entry points, camera placements, vulnerable approaches. The security is visible but inadequate. Cameras with blind spots lighting that creates shadows perfect for concealment, too many access points without proper coverage. The SUV stops at a circular driveway where Claire stands waiting, her professional attire replaced by casual slacks and a sweater, though she still carries her ever-present tablet. She smiles as Emma bounds from the car. "Welcome to Sandcastle," Claire says, extending a hand to Emma. "That's what Mr. Blackwood calls this place." "It's huge," Emma exclaims, looking up at the three-story main house with wide eyes. "Do people get lost inside?" "Sometimes," Claire admits with a conspiratorial smile. "But don't worry, I've been coming here for 5 years, and I know all the shortcuts." Ethan retrieves their bags, including the heavy one from the trunk that Claire eyes with understanding, but doesn't mention. "Where's Blackwood?" he asks quietly as Emma explores the entrance garden. "On a conference call. He asked me to get you and Emma settled in the East Guest House. It has its own security system and is easily defensible." The ease with which she slips into security terminology suggests she's been briefed, or perhaps has always had a better understanding of these matters than he'd given her credit for. "And Donovan," a shadow crosses Claire's face. "He's been difficult since your assessment. He's here somewhere with 4 of his team. They're not happy about your arrival." "I'm not here to make friends," Ethan says, shouldering the bags. "I'm here to keep everyone alive." The East Guest House proves to be larger than Ethan's entire Queens apartment, with 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen, and floor-to-ceiling windows facing a private stretch of beach. Emma immediately claims the smaller bedroom, unpacking Mr. Whiskers and placing him carefully on the pillow before racing to the windows to see the ocean. "Can we go to the beach tomorrow, Dad? Please?" "We'll see." He hedges, already mentally mapping patrol routes and security protocols. "I have work to do first." Claire, who has been quietly observing their interaction, steps forward. "I could take Emma to the beach tomorrow morning while you meet with Mr. Blackwood. There's a private cove that's completely secure. We can see it from the house." Ethan's first instinct is to refuse. Emma is his responsibility, not something to be handed off to virtual strangers. But the hopeful look on his daughter's face gives him pause. "Please, Dad, I've never seen the ocean up close." The realization strikes him like a physical blow. 8 years old, and Emma has never experienced the simple joy of waves breaking around her ankles, of building sandcastles at the water's edge. He's been so focused on keeping her safe, on maintaining their careful routine, that he's restricted her world in ways Sarah would never have approved. "Okay," he concedes, watching Emma's face light up, "but you listen to Ms. Claire, and you don't go in the water past your knees without me. I promise." Emma launches herself at him in a fierce hug, then turns to Claire. "I've never built a real sandcastle before. Do you know how—" "I'm something of an expert," Claire assures her with a warm smile. "My dad used to take me to Jones Beach when I was about your age. We had competitions to see who could build the most elaborate castles." "Who won?" "Oh, I did, of course," Claire says with mock seriousness, "but he was a worthy opponent." As Emma peppers Claire with questions about beach architecture, Ethan unpacks the heavier bag, revealing components of a security system far more sophisticated than anything Blackwood's team would possess. Equipment developed for special operations not commercially available. Claire notices but makes no comment, simply bidding them good night with a promise to return at 8 the next morning. After Emma is tucked in, Ethan spends hours installing additional security measures throughout the guest house. Motion sensors, vibration detectors on windows, custom alarms on all entry points. Only when he's satisfied with the perimeter does he allow himself to sit on the deck overlooking the moonlit ocean, the sound of waves a rhythmic counterpoint to his racing thoughts. This wasn't how life was supposed to unfold. He should be in Queens, helping Emma with homework, maintaining their safe, predictable routine. Instead, he's back in a world of threats and countermeasures of calculated risks and defensive positions. The skills he'd hoped to leave behind are now the only thing standing between his daughter and potential danger. His phone vibrates with a text from Claire. Breakfast at Main House 7:30. Jonathan wants full briefing. Security code for Gym 6392 if you want to use it before meeting. The message is followed by another. Emma will be fine tomorrow, I promise. It's the second message that stays with him as he finally retires to a bed far more luxurious than he's accustomed to, the waves crashing beyond the windows, like a distant reminder of how small human concerns are against the vast indifference of nature. The estate gym is state-of-the-art and empty at 5:30 when Ethan begins his workout, a punishing routine of functional exercises that keeps his body combat-ready despite years of civilian life. By 6:15, he's drenched in sweat and moving through advanced combatives patterns, muscle memory, guiding his body through strikes and counters developed for close quarters battle. He's so focused that he doesn't immediately notice Frank Donovan watching from the doorway, arms crossed over his barrel chest, expression unreadable. Impressive, Donovan says when Ethan finally acknowledges his presence. Seal, Ethan reaches for a towel, wiping sweat from his face. Once. Team 6, I'm guessing. You move like the Ghost programs. The reference to classified tactical units confirms Ethan's suspicion about Donovan's background. You were Delta. Donovan nods once. 20 years before private sector. He steps further into the gym, his posture a careful mix of professional respect and territorial challenge. Look, Morgan, I want to be clear. I don't have a problem with you helping assess our protocols, but this is my operation, my team. I won't be sidelined because Blackwood has a hard-on for new talent. I'm not here for your job, Ethan says, keeping his voice neutral. I'm here because someone is trying to kill your principal, and they've already made 2 sophisticated attempts. And brought your daughter into a potential combat zone, Donovan observes with a raised eyebrow. Not a decision I'd expect from someone with your training. The comment is designed to provoke, and Ethan feels the intended sting. Sometimes the safest place is beside the person everyone wants to protect. Is that what you're telling yourself? Donovan's skepticism is evident. Or is the money just too good to pass up? Ethan steps closer, close enough that Donovan instinctively shifts into a defensive posture. I'm here because the threat has expanded to include anyone associated with Blackwood, including me thanks to that video. That means my daughter could be targeted, whether she's in Queens or here. At least here, I can control the environment. Something in his tone must convince Donovan, who studies him for a long moment before offering a curt nod. Fair enough, but we do this as professionals. I need to know your capabilities, your limitations, and your plan. No lone wolf shit. Agreed. Full briefing at 7:30. Donovan extends his hand, a gesture that seems to cost him something in pride. For what it's worth, I saw the restaurant footage. Textbook neutralization. 3 hostiles down in 4 seconds with no collateral damage. That's Tier 1 work. Ethan accepts the handshake, recognizing the professional respect being offered. I got lucky. They weren't expecting resistance. The next ones will be, Donovan warns, his expression grim, and they won't come at us the same way twice. The breakfast briefing takes place in Blackwood's private study, a wood-paneled room with views of the ocean and security feeds displaying various angles of the estate grounds. Jonathan sits at the head of a massive oak table with Claire to his right, taking notes on her tablet. Donovan and 2 of his senior team members occupy one side of the table, while Ethan sits alone on the opposite side. The sniper was positioned on the roof of the building across from mine. Jonathan begins without preamble. Police found a professional setup, custom rifle precision optics, the works. But no fingerprints, no DNA, nothing traceable. Well, that matches the profile, Ethan says, reviewing the photos from the scene. These aren't street criminals. They're trained operators with military or intelligence backgrounds. Which narrows our suspect pool, Claire interjects, pulling up files on her tablet. I've been researching Charles Wallace's connections. Before founding Wallace Corporation, he worked for several defense contractors. He maintained those relationships even after starting his own company, meaning he knew people who know people who can hire this caliber of operative, Donovan concludes. Exactly. And his son Michael has been making concerning statements on private forums, blaming Mr. Blackwood directly for his father's suicide, discussing justice in ways that border on threatening. Jonathan leans forward, brow furrowed. A 19-year-old kid is behind assassination attempts. Unlikely, Ethan says, but he might be connected to whoever is. The timing is suspicious. The attempts started 6 months after Wallace's suicide, right when the initial shock would be wearing off, replaced by anger and a desire for retribution. There's more. Claire continues, her expression troubled. Charles Wallace had a brother-in-law, Victor Reeves, former Special Forces, dishonorably discharged for excessive force during an operation in Afghanistan. He dropped off the grid after Wallace's death, but resurfaced briefly 3 months ago when he visited Michael at his treatment facility. That's our connection, Ethan says with certainty. Reeves has the background to coordinate these attacks and the familial motivation. But not the resources, Jonathan objects. These operations aren't cheap, professional killers, specialized equipment. Unless someone's backing him, Donovan suggests, someone with deep pockets and their own grudge against you. The implication hangs in the air. Jonathan Blackwood has made many enemies on his climb to success. Any one of them might see Wallace's family tragedy as an opportunity for proxy revenge. The meeting continues for another hour, developing security protocols and response scenarios. Donovan's team will maintain outer perimeter security, while Ethan focuses on personal protection for Jonathan and, by extension, Claire. They establish communication procedures, safe rooms, evacuation routes, all the elements of a comprehensive protection plan. Throughout the discussion, Ethan finds himself repeatedly glancing at his watch, aware that Claire is scheduled to take Emma to the beach soon. The conflict between his professional responsibilities and parental concerns gnaws at him, a distraction he can't afford in this environment. Jonathan notices. We can continue this later, he says, surprising everyone with his perceptiveness. Your daughter is waiting for her beach excursion, I believe. I've covered the essential protocols. Ethan acknowledges, gathering his notes. Donovan's team can implement the perimeter measures while I check on Emma. Before you go, Jonathan says, his tone shifting to something almost hesitant. I want to thank you for agreeing to help. I understand the sacrifice it represents bringing your daughter into this situation. The gratitude seems genuine, and Ethan finds himself reevaluating his impression of the billionaire. Perhaps there's more to Jonathan Blackwood than corporate ruthlessness and entitlement. Just make sure your security team follows the protocols we've established. Ethan replies, unwilling to fully acknowledge the moment of connection. No exceptions, no shortcuts. He finds Emma waiting impatiently on the guest house porch, wearing a new swimsuit that Claire must have provided, complete with a matching sun hat and beach shoes. She clutches at a child-sized beach bag containing towels and what appears to be sandcastle building equipment. Dad, you're late, Miss Claire said. We should start at low tide to find the best shells. Claire stands nearby, her usual corporate attire replaced by linen pants and a simple blouse, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. She looks younger, more approachable, though Ethan notes the slight bulge of a small communication device in her pocket. She's maintaining security awareness despite the recreational context. Sorry about that, he says to Emma, then turns to Claire. Donovan's team is implementing the new protocols. They'll have eyes on the beach, but stay within the marked safe zone. Claire nods, understanding. Of course, we'll remain in direct line of sight from the security post. She hesitates, then adds, would you like to join us? The briefing seemed to conclude earlier than expected. When the invitation is casual but sincere, and Ethan finds himself tempted, not just to supervise Emma's safety, but to experience this moment of normalcy amid the tension of their circumstances. To watch his daughter encounter the ocean for the first time, to see her build sandcastles under the guidance of a woman who seems genuinely invested in her happiness. I need to finish installing some equipment, he says, finally, the responsibility of protection winning out over the pull of paternal enjoyment. But I'll join you after. Emma's disappointment is fleeting, replaced quickly by excitement as Claire leads her down the private path to the beach, their heads bent together in conversation. Ethan watches until they reach the shore, until he sees Emma's delighted reaction to her first steps into the surf before returning to his security duties. An hour later, his additional measures in place, he stands on the deck of the guest house, observing the scene below. Emma and Claire are engaged in serious sandcastle construction, a complex structure emerging under their collaborative efforts. Even from this distance, he can hear Emma's laughter carrying on the sea breeze, a sound so pure and untroubled that it momentarily displaces the weight of their circumstances. His phone buzzes with a text from Donovan. Perimeter protocols implemented and team in position, all clear. Ethan acknowledges the message, then makes his way down to the beach, his professional vigilance never fully subsiding, even as he approaches the industrious builders. "Dad," Emma calls, waving enthusiastically. "Look at our castle. Miss Claire knows how to make towers that don't fall down." The structure is impressive. A central keep surrounded by crenellated walls with a moat that fills with each advancing wave before draining through carefully engineered channels. "My dad taught me that the secret is the right ratio of wet to dry sand." Claire explains, her hands covered in sandy residue, her professional composure replaced by genuine enjoyment. "And proper foundation engineering." "It's amazing," Ethan acknowledges, settling onto the sand beside them. "Much better than anything I could build." "That's okay, Dad," Emma says with childlike generosity. "You're good at other things, like fixing stuff and keeping people safe." The simple statement resonates more deeply than Emma could know, affirming the choices that have defined his life since Sarah's death. He's given up career advancement, financial security, even personal fulfillment to keep his daughter safe, to be present in her life in ways his own father never was. Looking at her now, face alight with Gorny as she decorates the castle with shells, he can't regret those choices. Claire watches them both with a thoughtful expression. "She has your focus," she observes quietly. "The same intensity when working on something important." "That's Sarah, actually." Ethan corrects the name, coming easier than it once did. "She could concentrate on a problem for hours, blocking out everything else." "You must miss her very much." The simple acknowledgement, offered without pity or platitudes, catches him off guard. "Every day," he admits, "but especially in moments like this. Milestones she should have been here for." Claire nods understanding. "My mother used to say that the people we lose never really leave us. They just move from our side to our heart." "That's beautiful." "She was full of sayings like that," Claire says with a soft smile. "Most of them made more sense after she was gone." The shared understanding of loss creates a moment of connection that feels dangerous in its intimacy. Ethan finds himself noticing details he's been professionally avoiding. The way sunlight brings out auburn highlights in Claire's dark hair, how her smile transforms her entire face from professional efficiency to genuine warmth, the gentleness in her hands as she helps Emma perfect a tower. His thoughts are interrupted by the approach of one of Donovan's security team, a solidly built man with the hyper-vigilant gaze of someone with tactical training. "Mr. Morgan," the man says, his voice pitched low, "Mr. Donovan requests your presence at the main house. There's been a development." Ethan glances at Emma, happily absorbed in her castle construction. "What kind of development?" "Michael Wallace was just spotted in a town 10 miles from here, with a man matching Victor Reeves' description." The information sends a cold spike of adrenaline through Ethan's system. "Clear the beach," he orders quietly. "Get Claire and my daughter to the safe room in the main house." "Full lockdown protocol." The security officer nods and speaks into his wrist mic, initiating the prearranged security sequence. Within moments, 2 more officers appear at either end of the beach, establishing a protective perimeter. "Claire," Ethan calls, keeping his voice casual despite the urgency pulsing through him. "Could you take Emma up to the house? I think she's getting a little sunburned." Claire immediately picks up on his tone, her eyes sharpening with understanding. "Of course, Emma. Why don't we go get some lunch? We can come back to finish our castle afterward." Emma looks up, her expression shifting from disappointment to concern as she registers the tension in the adults around her. "Is something wrong, Dad?" "Just a work thing I need to handle," Ethan assures her, forcing a calm he doesn't feel. "Go with Miss Claire. Okay, I'll join you soon." As Claire leads Emma toward the house, flanked by security personnel, Ethan feels the familiar combat readiness settling over him. Heightened awareness, accelerated processing, emotions locked away behind the cold calculation of threat assessment and response planning. This is the part of himself he's kept carefully separated from Emma's world, the warrior who evaluates situations in terms of tactical advantage and acceptable casualties. He meets Donovan at the main house's security center, a converted study filled with monitors displaying camera feeds from around the property. Jonathan is already there, his face pale beneath his tan. Local police spotted Michael Wallace at a gas station in Southampton, Donovan explains without preamble. Surveillance footage confirms he was with Victor Reeves and two other men with military bearing. They purchased supplies consistent with a surveillance operation: food, water, batteries, binoculars. They're preparing to hit us here, Ethan concludes, studying the footage. How did they find us? We're investigating that, Donovan says grimly. But Blackwood's Hamptons property isn't exactly a secret. Anyone with internet access could find it. What's our status? Full lockdown initiated. All entry points secured, armed personnel at key positions. The safe room is prepped and Ms. Wilson has your daughter there now. Ethan nods approval. Good. Now we need to... The explosion cuts him off. A concussive blast that shakes the building and triggers alarms throughout the security system. The monitors showing the eastern perimeter erupt into static, then go dark. They're here, Ethan says, already moving toward the door. Donovan, get Blackwood to the secondary safe room. I'm going for Emma. Morgan, wait, Donovan calls after him. We need to coordinate. But Ethan has already gone racing through the house toward the primary safe room where his daughter waits, protected only by steel doors in Claire's presence. The warrior has fully emerged now, cold and calculating and utterly focused on a single mission: protect Emma at all cost. As he rounds the corner toward the safe room, gunfire erupts from the eastern wing. Sharp cracks of precision rifles answered by the security team's defensive positions. The attack has begun in earnest, and somewhere in the chaos, Victor Reeves is executing a plan months in the making. A plan of vengeance that now threatens everything Ethan has fought to protect. Gunfire echoes through the mansion's east wing as Ethan races toward the primary safe room, each shot mapping the tactical situation in his mind. 3 distinct weapon signatures: 2 military-grade rifles and a heavier automatic weapon, against the familiar report of Donovan's security team's standard-issue firearms. The attackers are well-equipped and have breached the outer perimeter faster than anyone anticipated. This isn't just an attack. It's a professional operation executed with precision planning. The safe room is located in the central portion of the main house behind a library that conceals its reinforced door. As Ethan approaches, he slows instincts, warning him that something isn't right. The hallway is too quiet, isolated from the chaos unfolding at the perimeter. He draws the compact 9mm pistol from his ankle holster, moving silently toward the library entrance. The door is ajar, a violation of lockdown protocol. Ethan presses his back against the wall, listening intently. Silence, then a faint scraping sound from within. Someone is inside who shouldn't be. He takes a slow breath, centering himself in the cold clarity of combat focus, then moves with explosive speed through the doorway, weapon raised, scanning for threats in the tactical sequence, drilled into him through thousands of hours of training. The library appears empty, its walls of leather-bound books and antique furniture undisturbed. But the hidden door to the safe room stands open, revealing the steel-reinforced chamber beyond. Ethan advances cautiously, every sense hyper-attuned to potential danger. Inside the safe room, he finds Claire on the floor, a gash on her temple leaking blood onto the polished concrete. She's conscious but dazed, struggling to sit up as Ethan kneels beside her. "Emma," she gasps, reaching for his arm with desperate fingers. "They took Emma." The words hit like physical blows, each one stealing breath and reason. "Who? How many?" "2 men. They knew the codes." Claire winces, touching her head wound. "They were waiting when we arrived." Professional calm. "One held me while the other told Emma they were your friends, that there was a problem, and they needed to take her somewhere safe." Cold fury rises in Ethan's chest, but he forces it down, channeling emotion into tactical assessment. "How long ago?" 5 minutes, maybe less." Claire struggles to her feet with Ethan's help. "They went through the service corridor that leads to the kitchen." The one man called the other Silas. The name registers immediately, a known alias for Victor Reeves from the intelligence Claire had gathered. He's taken Emma as leverage, or worse, as revenge against Jonathan, by targeting those connected to him. "Stay here," Ethan orders, helping Claire to the room's communication station. Lock the door behind me. Contact Donovan. Tell him Victor Reeves has my daughter. They're moving through the service corridor toward the kitchen. I'm coming with you, Claire insists, wiping blood from her face with shaking hands. You're injured and I need to move fast. Ethan's voice leaves no room for argument. The best way you can help Emma is by coordinating with security from here. The logic penetrates Claire's distress, and she nods reluctantly. Be careful. They're not amateurs, Ethan. The way they moved, the way they communicated, they're like you. The comparison lands with chilling accuracy. Former operators, men with the same training and mindset that once defined Ethan's existence. Men who see the world as a series of objectives and obstacles, who have learned to compartmentalize emotion in service of the mission. They're nothing like me, Ethan says, the cold fury now ice in his veins. I would never use a child as a tactical advantage. He leaves Claire at the communications panel and exits the safe room, pausing only to ensure she secures the door behind him. The gunfire at the perimeter has intensified, suggesting that the attack there is a diversion, a classic special operations tactic to draw security resources away from the primary objective. The service corridor is narrow and dimly lit, designed for staff to move unobtrusively through the mansion. Ethan advances silently, weapon ready, tracking faint sounds ahead. A man's low voice, a door opening. Then Emma's voice asking a question, her tone uncertain, but not yet frightened. She doesn't realize she's in danger. The thought brings equal measures of relief and urgency. The corridor emerges into the mansion's industrial kitchen, currently empty, as staff evacuated during the lockdown. Ethan pauses at the threshold, listening. Through the windows, he can see two men escorting Emma across the rear courtyard toward a service gate. One is tall and broad-shouldered, Victor Reeves based on the physical description. The other is younger, slimmer, moving with the hypervigilance of someone on their first real operation. Michael Wallace. The teenager has graduated from posting angry messages online to participating in an armed kidnapping. Victor has weaponized the boy's grief, transforming emotional pain into lethal purpose. Emma walks between them, still cooperative, but growing visibly nervous as they approach a black SUV parked just beyond the service gate. Ethan has perhaps 20 seconds before they reach the vehicle. He considers his options rapidly. Direct confrontation risks Emma being caught in crossfire. Calling out might cause the men to use her as a human shield. He needs to separate them to create a controlled engagement where Emma isn't in the line of fire. The kitchen offers an answer, a service phone that connects to various house locations, including outdoor intercoms. Ethan punches in the code for the courtyard speaker, then pitches his voice into the authoritative bark of a security officer. Attention, all personnel, armed hostiles approaching from the south perimeter. All units converge on south entrance immediately. The distraction works perfectly. Victor instinctively pushes Emma toward Michael, drawing his weapon and scanning for the new threat. In that moment of separation, Ethan bursts through the kitchen door, covering the distance to Michael and Emma in 3 long strides. Down, he shouts to Emma, who responds instantly, dropping to the ground as she's been taught in their home safety drills. Michael turns startled, reaching for a weapon at his waistband. But Ethan is already there, delivering a precise strike to the young man's sternum that sends him staggering backward, gasping for air. A second blow to the temple drops Michael unconscious to the ground. Victor is faster, already pivoting to bring his weapon to bear. Ethan launches himself forward, tackling Emma and rolling with her behind a stone planter as bullets chip the masonry around them. Stay down, baby, he whispers, positioning his body between Emma and the gunfire. Keep your eyes closed. Remember our game. Emma nods against his chest, squeezing her eyes shut. Count to 100 and don't peek. She recites, her voice trembling but controlled. That's right. Start counting now. As Emma begins whispering numbers, Ethan assesses the situation. Victor has taken cover behind a decorative wall 20 yards away, maintaining a firing position that pins them down. The unconscious Michael lies exposed in the courtyard between them, vulnerable but irrelevant to the immediate tactical problem. Morgan, Victor calls out, his voice carrying the distinctive cadence of military command. This doesn't have to get worse. Send the girl over and you walk away. That's not happening, Reeves, Ethan responds, using the man's real name as confirmation that he knows exactly who he's dealing with. You're surrounded, outgunned, and your distraction at the perimeter is being contained as we speak. You think this is about winning? Victor's laugh holds bitter edges. This is about justice. Blackwood destroyed my family. He drove Charles to suicide and left Michael with nothing. An eye for an eye. You sting a child to settle your score. There's no honor in that, soldier. The deliberate use of military terminology is calculated to evoke the code that once governed them both. The principles that separate warriors from criminals, professionals from thugs. Honor, Victor spits the word. Where was honor when Blackwood leveraged Charles into bankruptcy? When he blocked every attempt to restructure the debt? When he bought the bank notes just to ensure there was no way out? The revelation lands with unexpected weight. Ethan had known Jonathan acquired Wallace Corporation through aggressive business tactics, but not the extent of his targeted destruction of Charles Wallace personally. Whatever Blackwood did, Emma is innocent. Ethan calls back, shifting slightly to get a better angle on Victor's position. She's 8 years old, Reeves. Is this who you've become? A man who terrorizes children. A moment of silence follows, heavy with the weight of moral reckoning. When Victor speaks again, his voice has lost some of its hardness. Send her inside. Then you and I finish this. Operator to operator. It's as close to a reasonable offer as Ethan is likely to get. A chance to remove Emma from danger while confronting Victor directly. But trusting the word of a man desperate enough to orchestrate this attack is a risk Ethan can't take. 67, 68, Emma continues counting against his chest, her small body trembling with fear she's trying bravely to control. The sound steals Ethan's resolve. He won't gamble with his daughter's safety, not even against professional courtesy between former operators. Time for a different approach. Donovan, Ethan says quietly into his communication device. Victor Reeves has us pinned down in the rear courtyard. My daughter is with me, currently safe but exposed. I need a distraction on the south perimeter, something loud enough to draw attention. Copy that, Donovan's voice crackles back. Distraction in 30 seconds. Be ready to move. Ethan leans close to Emma's ear. Change of plans, sweetheart. When I say go, we're going to run very fast back to the kitchen door. Don't stop, don't look back, just run straight ahead. Can you do that? Emma nods, her counting abandoned as she prepares herself for action. Ethan feels a surge of pride amid the adrenaline. His daughter has inherited not just Sarah's analytical mind, but his own ability to function under pressure. The south perimeter erupts in a series of controlled explosions, flashbangs and smoke grenades creating a cacophony of noise and confusion. As expected, Victor's attention shifts momentarily toward the new threat. Go, Ethan urges, half lifting Emma as they sprint toward the kitchen entrance. Victor recovers quickly, firing 2 shots that go wide. Ethan and Emma reach the door and tumble through into the relative safety of the kitchen. All the way to the pantry, Ethan directs, guiding Emma toward a heavy door at the rear of the kitchen. Inside, quickly. The walk-in pantry is reinforced, a secondary safe room designed for staff in case of emergency. Ethan ushers Emma inside, kneeling to meet her eyes once the door is secure. I need you to stay here until I come back, he says, holding her shoulders gently. Or until Ms. Claire or Mr. Donovan comes with the special password. Remember what it is. Sandcastle, Emma whispers, tears finally breaking through her brave facade. Daddy, I'm scared. I know, baby. He pulls her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, still carrying traces of ocean salt from their beach morning that now seems a lifetime ago. But you're the bravest person I know. Braver than me, even. She shakes her head against his chest. You're not scared of anything. That's not true, Ethan says, pulling back to meet her gaze. I get scared too, but like we talked about, being brave isn't about not feeling scared. It's about doing what's right even when you are scared. Emma nods, wiping tears with the back of her hand. Like now you're doing the right thing even though you're scared. Exactly like now. He kisses her forehead, then rises. I have to go, make sure the bad men can't hurt anyone else. You stay here, stay quiet, and wait for the password. Promise you'll come back. The tremor in her voice nearly breaks his resolve. I promise, Ethan says, infusing the words with all the certainty he can muster. Nothing in this world could keep me from coming back to you. Securing the pantry door behind him, Ethan retrieves his weapon and advances toward the courtyard. The momentary tenderness of fatherhood recedes, replaced by the cold focus of the warrior. Victor Reeves has threatened his child, has invaded the sanctuary Ethan created, has forced him to become the man he left behind when Sarah died. For that, there will be a reckoning. The courtyard has changed in the brief minutes since their retreat. Michael Wallace is no longer where he fell, suggesting Victor has moved him to safety. Two of Donovan's security team have established positions at the perimeter, maintaining covering fire that keeps Victor pinned behind his decorative wall. Ethan approaches Donovan, who has taken command of the situation from a protected position near the kitchen entrance. "My daughter is secure in the kitchen pantry safe room," Ethan reports. "What's our status?" "Perimeter breach contained," Donovan replies grimly. "Two hostiles down, one wounded and in custody. They were a diversion as you suspected. Reeves and the Wallace kid are our primary targets now." "Michael's just a confused kid being manipulated," Ethan says, surprising himself with the instinctive defense of the young man who helped abduct Emma. "Reeves is the one calling the shots. Kid or not, he's participating in an armed assault and attempted kidnapping," Donovan counters. "But I'll keep that in mind if we take him alive." The phrasing sends a chill through Ethan. Despite everything, the thought of Michael Wallace, barely out of childhood himself, driven by grief over his father's suicide, dying in this futile revenge mission, seems deeply wrong. "We need to take them both alive," Ethan insists. "Victor to face justice, and Michael because he deserves a chance to rebuild his life after Reeves is out of the picture." Donovan gives him a measuring look. "Didn't expect that from you, considering he helped grab your daughter." Emma is safe now, and killing them won't solve the underlying problem. Ethan pauses, considering how much to reveal. Blackwood's acquisition of Wallace Corporation wasn't just aggressive business. It was deliberately destructive. He systematically cut off every avenue for Charles Wallace to save his company or himself. So what? That's business. It's relevant because it means this cycle doesn't end with Victor and Michael. There's legitimate grievance here that killing them won't address. Donovan processes this with professional detachment. "You're thinking like a strategic operator, not just a tactical one. I can respect that." He gestures toward the courtyard. "So what's your play?" "I need to get close enough to engage Victor directly. Operator to operator, like he suggested." "That's suicide. He's got superior position and nothing to lose." "He thinks he has nothing to lose," Ethan corrects, "but he still cares about Michael. That's his vulnerability." Understanding dawns in Donovan's eyes. "You want to use the kid as leverage. Not as a hostage or threat," Ethan clarifies, "as a reminder of what's really at stake here. Victor thinks he's avenging Charles, protecting Michael. I need to show him he's doing the opposite." Donovan considers this, then nods reluctantly. "It's your play. What do you need from us?" "Keep him contained, but ease up on the direct pressure. Make him think you're regrouping or waiting for reinforcements. I need him focused on me, not on your team as an immediate threat. And if your psychological approach fails," Ethan's expression hardens, "then I'll do what's necessary to ensure everyone else's safety." With the plan established, Ethan circles through the mansion to approach the courtyard from a different angle. Intelligence from Donovan confirms that Michael is conscious, again positioned with Victor behind the decorative wall. They appear to be arguing, their gestures visible on thermal imaging, though their words are inaudible at this distance. Ethan finds a position that gives him line of sight to their location, while providing adequate cover. From here, he can initiate contact without immediately triggering a firefight. "Victor," he calls out, pitching his voice to carry across the courtyard. "We need to talk." A tense pause follows before Victor's response comes. "Nothing to talk about, Morgan. You had your chance." "It's not about chances anymore," Ethan continues, maintaining the even tone of negotiation. "It's about Michael." This provokes a visible reaction. Victor shifting position, presumably to confer with or check on Michael. "Michael didn't sign up for a suicide mission," Ethan presses. "He came for justice, not to die in someone else's vendetta." "Shut up!" This comes from Michael himself, his younger voice cracking with emotion. "You don't know anything about me. I know your father wouldn't want this for you." Ethan responds, directing his words specifically to the teenager now. "He wouldn't want you throwing your life away, attacking an innocent child, or dying in a courtyard shootout." "My father is dead because of Blackwood," Michael shouts back, raw grief evident in every syllable. "Yes, he is." Ethan acknowledges the simple validation, clearly unexpected. "And nothing can bring him back. Not killing Blackwood, not kidnapping my daughter, not dying here today. The question is, what you do with the life your father left you." The courtyard falls silent. Ethan continues, sensing an opening. Victor is using your pain, Michael, using it to fuel his own revenge. Ask yourself, is this what your father would have wanted for you to become, a kidnapper? A killer? Don't listen to him, Victor's voice interjects, but with less conviction than before. I know about loss. Ethan continues, speaking directly to Michael. My wife died 3 years ago, cancer. For a long time I was angry at the world, at God, at the doctors who couldn't save her. But that anger wouldn't have honored her memory. Living well, raising our daughter with love, that's how I honor Sarah. He pauses, letting the words sink in. How will you honor your father, Michael, by dying here, or by building something from the ruins? The silence stretches heavy with the weight of choices and consequences. Then unexpectedly, Michael's voice comes again, quieter, uncertain. What happens if we surrender? Michael, don't. Victor begins, but Michael cuts him off. I'm not dying here, Uncle Vic. This isn't what Dad would want. Another tense silence follows, then Victor's voice, now weary. You're right. Charles wouldn't want this for you. A pause, then Morgan. If I surrender, what guarantee does Michael have? I'll personally ensure he gets legal representation, Ethan promises. His age, the circumstances of his father's death, your influence over him, all of it will be considered. It won't be easy, but he'll have a future. And me. You face consequences for your actions, but you face them alive with dignity. Operator to operator, I give you my word. The negotiation hangs in the balance, Victor weighing options that have suddenly narrowed from vengeance or death to surrender and survival. The minutes stretch, tension building as security teams maintain their positions around the courtyard. Finally, Victor's response comes. Weapon coming out first, unloaded magazine removed. True to his word, a pistol slides into view from behind the wall, its magazine visibly separated. Next comes a combat knife, tossed to clatter on the stone paving. Coming out now, Victor announces. The kid first, then me. Michael emerges, first, hands raised, face streaked with tears and soot. He looks impossibly young, the hardened revenge seeker revealed as a traumatized teenager, well out of his depth. Donovan's team secures him immediately, firm, but not unnecessarily rough. Victor follows his military bearing, evident even in surrender. Tall and powerfully built, with a scarred face that speaks of past combat, he keeps his hands visible as security personnel approach to restrain him. You fought honorably, Morgan, Victor says as they lead him past Ethan's position. But this isn't over. The wrong man died that day. Blackwood deserves everything I planned for him. Maybe, Ethan acknowledges, holding the older man's gaze. But justice isn't yours to deliver, especially not at the cost of more innocent lives. Victor's expression shifts subtly, not quite acceptance, but recognition of a principled stance he can understand even from an adversary. He nods once before security leads him away, a gesture of professional respect between men who once operated under similar codes. As the courtyard clears, as medical personnel attend to the wounded, and police begin arriving to secure the scene, Ethan returns to the kitchen pantry. He enters the code, then calls through the door. Emma, it's Dad. The password is Sandcastle. The door opens immediately and Emma launches herself into his arms with such force that it nearly knocks him backward. He lifts her, holding her close as she sobs against his shoulder. Fear and relief and lingering terror, all pouring out at once. The bad men are gone, he assures her, stroking her hair. You're safe now. Everyone's safe. Over Emma's shoulder, he sees Claire enter the kitchen, her head wound bandaged, her expression flooded with relief at the sight of Emma in his arms. She approaches cautiously, not wanting to intrude on their reunion. Is it really over? She asks quietly. Victor and Michael are in custody, Ethan confirms. The other attackers have been neutralized or captured. It's over. Emma lifts her head from his shoulder, her face tear-stained, but composed. Can we go home now? Daddy, I don't like it here anymore. The simple request carries the weight of innocence confronted with violence, of safety, shattered and needing to be rebuilt. Ethan meets Claire's gaze over Emma's head, reading understanding there. Understanding of what Emma needs now, of what healing looks like after trauma. Yes, sweetheart, he promises, pressing a kiss to her forehead. We can go home. But even as he speaks the words, Ethan knows that home has become a more complicated concept. Their apartment in Queens feels distant now, a sanctuary that has been psychologically, if not physically, compromised by the day's events. Emma's sense of safety, the careful construct he's built over years of stable routines and consistent presence, has been damaged in ways that will take time to repair. And there are loose ends still dangling. Jonathan Blackwood's ruthless destruction of Charles Wallace remains unaddressed. The systemic issues that allowed such corporate predation to destroy lives continue unchecked. Victor Reeves is contained, but the conditions that created him persist. These thoughts occupy Ethan's mind as he carries Emma through the mansion, now swarming with police and emergency personnel. Claire walks beside them, her professional composure reasserted despite the bandage on her temple and the lingering shock in her eyes. Jonathan intercepts them in the main foyer, his expression a complex mixture of relief, guilt, and something harder to define, perhaps the first stirrings of genuine self-reflection. Morgan, he begins, then stops seemingly at a loss for words, in the face of Emma's tear-stained face buried against her father's shoulder. Not now, Ethan says quietly but firmly. My daughter needs space and time to process what happened. We can talk later. Jonathan nods, accepting the boundary with uncharacteristic humility. Of course, I've arranged for a helicopter to take you wherever you need to go. No more car journeys today. The consideration surprises Ethan, a thoughtful accommodation rather than a display of wealth or power. Thank you, he acknowledges simply. As they continue toward the waiting helicopter, Claire falls into step beside them. Where will you go? She asks, concern evident in her voice. Ethan considers the question, weighing options against Emma's immediate needs. A hotel in the city for tonight, he decides. Somewhere anonymous and secure. Then we'll reassess tomorrow. Claire nods understanding. I can make those arrangements, she offers. Something suitable for Emma with proper security protocols. The assistance is welcome, though Ethan finds himself hesitating. Accepting help has never come naturally to him, especially after years of handling everything alone. But today has demonstrated the limitations of self-reliance, the vulnerability that comes with isolation. Thank you, he says finally. That would be helpful. As they approach the helicopter, Emma stirs in his arms, lifting her head to look at Claire. Are you coming with us? She asks, her voice small but hopeful. The question catches both adults by surprise. Claire looks to Ethan, uncertainty clear in her expression, unwilling to presume to intrude on their family unit in this vulnerable moment. Ethan studies his daughter's face, reading the need there, not just for security, but for continuity, for the presence of someone who has become, against all expectations, a source of comfort and stability in Emma's disrupted world. Would you like Ms. Claire to come with us? He asks gently. Emma nods against his shoulder. She was brave in the safe room. She tried to stop the bad men from taking me even when they hurt her. The simple statement reveals more about what happened than Claire had shared. Her attempt to physically protect Emma, resulting in the head wound she now bears. Ethan meets Claire's gaze with new appreciation, seeing beyond the polished corporate assistant to the woman who would risk herself to protect a child she barely knows. We'd like you to come, Ethan says, the invitation encompassing more than just the helicopter ride, an acknowledgement of Claire's place in their unfolding story, a recognition that some connections forged in crisis create obligations that outlast the immediate danger. Claire's professional mask slips momentarily, revealing genuine emotion beneath. I'd be honored, she says simply. As they board the helicopter, Emma still cradled in Ethan's arms, and Claire following close behind, the rotor wash whips around them like the winds of change. Powerful, disorienting, but ultimately clearing the air for whatever comes next. The helicopter lifts off, rising above the Hamptons estate with its shattered windows and bullet-scarred walls above the remnants of the sandcastle on the beach below, now being reclaimed by the rising tide. From this height, the morning's innocence and the afternoon's violence seem equally distant, both part of a landscape they are now leaving behind. Ethan holds Emma close as they bank toward Manhattan, the setting sun casting long shadows across the water beneath them. Claire sits opposite, her gaze alternating between the view outside and the father and daughter across from her, her expression thoughtful. The day's events have redrawn boundaries, shifted relationships, opened doors that had seemed permanently closed. What awaits in the city and beyond remains unclear. But for now, in this moment of transition, Ethan allows himself to acknowledge a simple truth. They are not ending this day the same people who began it. The Peninsula Hotel suite on the 38th floor offers panoramic views of Central Park, Though Ethan pays little attention to the million-dollar vista, his focus remains entirely on Emma, who has finally fallen asleep after hours of intermittent tears and questions no 8-year-old should have to ask. Why did those men want to take her? Would they come back? Was everyone still safe? He sits beside her bed in the suite's second bedroom, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest, Mr. Whiskers clutched tightly in her arms. The stuffed cat had been retrieved from the Hamptons estate, along with their few belongings brought to the hotel by one of Donovan's security team. The familiar toy provided an anchor to normalcy amid the chaos of the day, something Ethan understands all too well. After combat operations, he'd often found himself seeking small comforts. The same brand of coffee, a particular book, anything to reconnect with the ordinary world after the extraordinary stress of violence. A soft knock at the door draws his attention. Claire stands in the doorway, her business attire exchanged for hotel-provided loungewear, her hair loose around her shoulders. The bandage on her temple is a stark reminder of her own courage hours earlier. She's finally asleep, Ethan says quietly, rising from the chair to join Claire in the suite's main room, leaving Emma's door ajar so he can hear if she wakes. The doctor said she might have trouble sleeping. Claire acknowledges, moving to the kitchenette where she's prepared tea. Acute stress can disrupt sleep patterns, but children are often more resilient than we expect. Sarah used to say that, Ethan notes, accepting the offered cup with a grateful nod, that kids bend where adults break. She saw it all the time in her oncology work. The mention of his late wife comes easier now, almost natural in conversation. Claire seems to notice this shift, offering a gentle smile as they settle on opposite ends of the plush sofa. I spoke with Jonathan, she says after a moment. He's called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. The attack has changed him somehow. Near-death experiences tend to do that, Ethan observes dryly. It's more than that. Claire's expression turns thoughtful. When he heard about Michael Wallace, about what Victor told you regarding the acquisition tactics, I've never seen him like that before. Shaken, yes, but also reflective. He asked me to compile everything about the Wallace Corporation takeover, every decision, every communication. Guilty conscience? Perhaps, or the beginning of one. She hesitates, then adds, he also asked about Emma, how she's doing, if there's anything she needs. Ethan's instinctive response is defensive. Jonathan Blackwood's concern seems too little too late after Emma was traumatized because of his business practices. But he tempers the reaction, recognizing it as partly unfair. Jonathan didn't orchestrate the attack, didn't put Emma in Victor's crosshairs deliberately. Emma needs stability, routine, a return to normal life, Ethan says finally. But normal feels complicated now. Claire studies him over the rim of her teacup. Because of the attack. Because of everything. Ethan rises, moving to the window where Manhattan spreads below like a circuit board of light and shadow. I left that life behind for a reason, Claire. The violence, the hypervigilance, the calculated risks. None of it compatible with being the father Emma needs. And yet you were exactly the father she needed today, Claire points out quietly. Your training, your instincts. They protected her when nothing else could have. The observation lands with unexpected weight. Ethan has spent years compartmentalizing his past, treating his SEAL training and combat experience as something to suppress rather than integrate. Today, those skills weren't liabilities, but essential tools that kept Emma alive. I don't know how to reconcile the two sides of myself, he admits, still facing the window. The dishwasher and the operator, the father and the warrior. I've been treating them as mutually exclusive for so long. Maybe they don't need reconciliation, Claire suggests. Maybe they're already parts of the same whole. Before Ethan can respond, his phone vibrates with an incoming call from Donovan. He answers immediately, alert for any security concerns. Morgan, Donovan's voice comes through clearly. Thought you'd want an update. Victor Reeves is in federal custody, facing multiple charges, including attempted kidnapping, conspiracy, and assault with deadly intent. Michael Wallace is being processed separately with consideration for his age and circumstances. Any chance he'll get leniency? Possible. His cooperation after surrender works in his favor, and we've got Victor's statement confirming the manipulation angle. The kid was definitely under Reeves' influence. Good, it did. Ethan says, surprising himself with how much he cares about Michael Wallace's fate. What about the others, the perimeter team? Two in custody, one in surgery, but expected to survive. Professional contractors, as we suspected, with military backgrounds. They're not talking yet, but they will. In Blackwood's security, two injuries, nothing life-threatening. Could have been much worse. Donovan pauses, then adds, "You did good work today, Morgan. Clean operation under extreme pressure. If you ever want to get back in the game, I know several private firms that would snap you up." The offer is unexpected but not surprising. The security industry values operators with Ethan's background and demonstrated effectiveness. "Appreciate that," Ethan responds non-committally. "But my focus now is Emma." "Understood. One more thing. We found a flash drive on Victor encrypted. Tech team is working on it, but preliminary results suggest it contains financial records. Might be evidence of who bankrolled this operation." This new information shifts Ethan's understanding of the situation. Victor and Michael had grievances against Jonathan, certainly, but financing a professional team for multiple assassination attempts requires resources beyond a former operator's pension and a teenager's trust fund. Someone else wanted Blackwood dead, Ethan concludes. Someone with money and connections. That's our working theory. I'll keep you updated if we learn more. Donovan hesitates, then adds with unusual warmth, "Get some rest, Morgan. Your daughter needs you at your best." After ending the call, Ethan relays the information to Claire, whose analytical mind immediately begins processing implications. If someone financed Victor's vendetta, they're still out there. She observes a concern evident in her voice. Potentially still a threat to Jonathan, and by extension to you and Emma. The reality settles heavily between them. This might not truly be over. The immediate danger has passed, but the underlying threat remains unresolved. "I need to get Emma somewhere safe." Ethan decides the protective father and tactical operator, now thinking in unison rather than opposition. Somewhere nobody would connect to Blackwood or the Wallace situation. "I can help with that," Claire offers immediately. "Jonathan owns properties under shell companies that don't trace back to him. Private, secure, off the grid." Ethan weighs the offer against his instinct for self-reliance. "I appreciate that, but I think we need complete separation from Blackwood Industries for now. New identities, new location at least, until we know who else was involved and what they want." Claire's expression falls slightly, though she works to conceal her disappointment. Of course, that makes tactical sense. The conversation pauses as Emma calls out from the bedroom, her voice small and frightened. Ethan moves immediately to her side, finding her sitting up in bed, eyes wide with residual fear from whatever dreams had disturbed her sleep. "I'm here, sweetheart," he soothes, sitting beside her on the bed. "Everything's okay. We're safe." "I dreamed the bad men came back," she whispers, clutching Mr. Whiskers tighter. "They took you away, and I was all alone." "That's not going to happen," Ethan promises, pulling her into a gentle embrace. "I'm not going anywhere." "But what if more bad men come? What if they find us here?" The question reveals how deeply today's events have shaken her sense of security, the fundamental belief that her father can keep her safe in all circumstances. It's a faith Ethan has worked tirelessly to build and maintain since Sarah's death, and seeing it damaged cuts deeper than any physical wound could. "Would it help if Ms. Claire stayed in here with you for a while?" he suggests, noticing Claire hovering concernedly in the doorway. "I need to make some phone calls to make sure we stay safe, but she could keep you company." Emma considers this, then nods hesitantly. "Okay, but you'll come back, always." Ethan affirms the simple word, carrying the weight of absolute promise. Claire settles into the chair beside Emma's bed, her natural warmth emerging as she engages the child in quiet conversation about favorite books and stories, neutral topics designed to redirect Emma's thoughts away from fear. Ethan watches them briefly before stepping into the main room to make his calls. His first call is to Mrs. Rivera, explaining in carefully edited terms that he and Emma are safe but won't be returning to the apartment immediately due to complications from the restaurant incident. The older woman accepts this with the pragmatic concern of someone who has seen enough of life to know when not to ask too many questions. She agrees to water the plants and collect their mail until further notice. The second call is more complicated, reaching out to a former teammate who now works in private security with specialized expertise in temporary identities and relocation. Jake Matthews answered Ethan's wedding invitation, but couldn't attend due to an overseas contract. He sent flowers when Sarah died and offered help that Ethan was too proud to accept at the time. Now pride takes a back seat to Emma's safety. Matthews, the voice answers on the third ring, professional, but wary of the unknown number. It's Morgan, Ethan says simply. A pause, then warmth floods the connection. Holy shit, Ethan. It's been, 3 years? About that, I need help, Jake. The kind that doesn't leave paper trails. The levity vanishes from Jake's tone, replaced by the focused attention of an operator receiving mission parameters. Talk to me. Ethan outlines a situation in concise terms. The restaurant incident, Victor Reeves, the attack at the Hamptons estate, the unknown financier still potentially targeting anyone connected to Jonathan Blackwood. I need to disappear with my daughter, he concludes. Not permanently, but long enough to ensure we're not in the crosshairs while the rest of this plays out. I can arrange that, Jake confirms without hesitation. New identities, secured location, communications protocols. Tomorrow, the sooner we're clear, the better. I'll text you coordinates for a meeting point. Bring minimal possessions, nothing traceable. Cash only from this point forward. Jake pauses, then adds, Ethan, are you sure this is necessary? You've built a life for Emma in New York. Her safety comes first, Ethan responds, the decision already solidified in his mind. Everything else is secondary. After finalizing arrangements with Jake, Ethan returns to Emma's bedroom to find her finally drifting back to sleep. Claire still in the chair beside her, one hand gently stroking Emma's hair in a soothing rhythm that reminds him painfully of Sarah. Claire looks up as he enters, her expression questioning. He gestures for her to join him in the main room, where he outlines his plan for temporary relocation. We leave tomorrow, he explains quietly. New identities, new location. Just until the situation is resolved and we know Emma isn't in danger. Claire absorbs this with professional composure, though something like grief flickers in her eyes. I understand. It's the safest option for Emma. She hesitates, then adds, will you tell me where you're going? I can't, Ethan says gently. The fewer people who know, the safer we'll be. Of course, Claire nods, her practical nature accepting the logic even as her expression betrays deeper feelings. Is there anything I can do to help before you go? Ethan studies her for a moment, seeing beyond the polished assistant to the woman who has, against all expectations, become something more than a professional connection. Someone who protected Emma with her own body, who offered comfort when it was most needed, who understands the weight of his decisions without judgment. Actually, yes, he decides. I need to speak with Jonathan before we leave, in person, privately. Can you arrange that for early tomorrow? I'll make it happen, Claire promises. What time? 7 a.m. before the board meeting. And Claire, he pauses, searching for the right words. Thank you for everything today. Emma and I both. You don't need to thank me, she interrupts gently. Some things transcend professional obligations. The simple statement acknowledges the unspoken shift in their relationship, from strangers connected by circumstance to something more complex and meaningful. Not quite friends, certainly not romantic, but bound by shared experience and mutual respect that runs deeper than either had anticipated. Claire leaves shortly afterward, returning to her own room elsewhere in the hotel, leaving Ethan to his preparations and thoughts. He spends hours securing their digital footprint, deactivating social media accounts, contacting Emma's school about an extended family emergency, transferring funds to untraceable accounts Jake has established. All the while, he checks on Emma, regularly watching her sleep that has finally deepened into genuine rest. Morning arrives with soft, golden light filtering through the suite's windows. Ethan has slept little but feels clear-headed and focused, the familiar state of operational readiness that once defined his professional life. Emma wakes confused but calmer than the night before, accepting with childlike adaptability Ethan's explanation that they'll be doing a special trip for a while. Like an adventure, she asks as she dresses in the clothes Claire had arranged to be delivered. Simple, practical items, without designer labels or identifying features. Something like that. Ethan agrees, helping her pack Mr. Whiskers and her few other essentials into a new backpack. We'll be staying somewhere quiet while things settle down here in the city. Will Ms. Claire come with us? The question catches Ethan off guard, though perhaps it shouldn't. In the space of 2 days, Claire has become a significant presence in Emma's life, a source of comfort and stability amid chaos. No, sweetheart, Ms. Claire has her job here, but maybe someday, when we come back, we can see her again. Emma accepts this with a small nod, disappointment evident, but not overwhelming. I liked her. She's kind like Mom was. The comparison lands with unexpected weight. Sarah had indeed shared certain qualities with Claire: intelligence tempered by compassion, practical competence paired with emotional insight. The realization stirs something in Ethan that he quickly sets aside. Now isn't the time for such considerations. At precisely 7, they arrive at Jonathan Blackwood's penthouse office in Midtown. Security protocols have been significantly enhanced since the attacks, with multiple checkpoints and armed personnel monitoring all approaches. Claire meets them in the private elevator lobby, professional in appearance, but with shadows under her eyes, suggesting a night as restless as Ethan's. He's waiting for you, she informs Ethan, then crouches to Emma's level. Would you like to come with me to get some breakfast while your dad talks with Mr. Blackwood? I heard there are amazing chocolate croissants in the executive dining room. Emma looks to Ethan for permission, which he grants with a nod, grateful for Claire's thoughtfulness in providing both privacy for his meeting and distraction for Emma. I'll see you soon, he promises Emma as she takes Claire's offered hand. Be good, okay? I'm always good. Emma responds with a flash of her old spirit that warms Ethan's heart. Jonathan Blackwood stands at the windows of his office, silhouetted against the morning skyline when Ethan enters. He turns immediately, his usual commanding presence, subdued by evident fatigue and something less tangible, a weight of recognition that hadn't been there before. Morgan, he acknowledges, gesturing to a seating area rather than his imposing desk. Thank you for coming. How is Emma Tfarium? Recovering, Ethan answers, simply taking a seat opposite Jonathan. Children are resilient, but yesterday left marks that will take time to heal. Jonathan nods, genuine regret in his expression. I'm sorry she was drawn into this. That was never my intention. Intentions matter less than outcomes. Ethan observes, not unkindly, but with the directness of someone who has lived with consequences rather than theories. Which is why I'm here. We're leaving New York today, Emma and I, going somewhere safe until the situation is fully resolved. If Jonathan is surprised by this declaration, he doesn't show it. A wise precaution. My security team can arrange. Already handled, Ethan interrupts. No connection to you or Blackwood Industries. It's better that way. Understanding dawns in Jonathan's eyes. You think I'm still a target. I think whoever financed Victor Reeves isn't finished. The flash drive Donovan's team recovered suggests a third party with resources and motivation. Until that person is identified and neutralized, anyone connected to you is potentially at risk. Jonathan absorbs this with a calculating nod. Claire mentioned you wanted to speak with me before leaving. I assume it's not just to inform me of your departure. It's about Michael Wallace. Ethan leans forward slightly, meeting Jonathan's gaze directly. And more broadly, about the consequences of how you conduct business. A defensive flash crosses Jonathan's expression before settling into something more receptive. Go on. I've seen what happens when people feel they have nothing left to lose. Ethan begins choosing his words carefully. In combat zones, in desperate communities. When conventional justice seems impossible, people create their own versions. Victor Reeves convinced himself he was delivering justice for Charles Wallace's suicide. Charles made his own choices. Jonathan counters, though with less conviction than might be expected. After you systematically eliminated all other options, Ethan points out. Claire showed me the acquisition records last night. You didn't just buy his company. You specifically targeted his personal assets, blocked restructuring attempts, leveraged connections to ensure no other financial institution would work with him. Jonathan doesn't deny these actions, his silence confirmation enough. I'm not here to judge your business practices, Ethan continues, but I've seen firsthand what they created. A grieving teenage boy vulnerable to radicalization, a former operator with nothing left to lose, an assassination attempt that put my daughter in danger. What exactly are you asking from Morgan? Two things. First, use your influence to ensure Michael Wallace gets proper legal representation and mental health support. He's a traumatized kid who made terrible choices under the influence of a manipulative adult. He deserves a chance to rebuild his life. Jonathan considers this briefly before nodding. Reasonable. And the second, take a hard look at how Blackwood Industries operates, Ethan says simply. At the human cost of victories that add zeros to your net worth but destroy lives in the process. I'm not asking you to become a saint or abandon capitalism, just to recognize that corporations aren't the only entities that matter in your equations. The directness of the request hangs between them, neither accusation nor plea, but something more fundamental. One man asking another to recognize the ripple effects of power wielded without sufficient consideration for its human impact. Jonathan is silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. When he finally speaks, his voice carries an unfamiliar note of introspection. When my brother committed suicide 10 years ago, I told myself it was his weakness, not my success, that drove him to it. The admission comes unexpectedly, offering a glimpse into the personal history that shaped Jonathan's ruthless approach to business and life. I was in Tokyo closing the deal that made my first billion while he was writing his note. He called 7 times that day. I never picked up. Ethan remained silent, recognizing the rare vulnerability being displayed. I've spent a decade convincing myself that sentiment is weakness, that emotional considerations have no place in business decisions. Jonathan turns toward the window, the morning light harsh on his features. Yesterday, watching a teenage boy led away in handcuffs because his father saw no way forward. I recognize something I've been avoiding for 10 years. He turns back to Ethan, something resolved in his expression. I'll ensure Michael Wallace gets everything he needs: legal representation, psychological support, educational opportunities. And as for Blackwood Industries, he pauses, choosing his words carefully. The board meeting this morning isn't just about security protocols. It's about fundamental changes to our acquisition practices, our corporate responsibility policies. The skepticism must show in Ethan's expression because Jonathan continues with unexpected earnestness. I'm not claiming overnight transformation, Morgan. But yesterday wasn't just another hostile takeover attempt. It was a mirror, and I didn't particularly like what I saw reflected back. The acknowledgement is more than Ethan expected. Not a complete redemption arc, but the beginning of potential change from a man whose power gives his choices tremendous impact. That's a start, Ethan acknowledges, rising from his seat. I should get back to Emma. We have a long journey ahead. Where will you go? Jonathan asks, then immediately raises a hand. Don't answer that. It's safer if I don't know. We'll be in touch when it's safe to return, Ethan says, moving toward the door. In the meantime, I trust you'll keep Claire informed about developments regarding whoever financed Victor's operation. Of course, Jonathan hesitates, then adds, she's extraordinary, you know. Not just professionally. The way she protected your daughter yesterday without thought for her own safety, I've never seen that side of her before. The observation resonates with Ethan's own evolving understanding of Claire Wilson, the layers beneath her professional exterior that circumstances have revealed. Yes, he agrees simply, she is. They part with a handshake that carries more genuine respect than either might have anticipated days earlier. Not friendship exactly, but mutual recognition between men who have glimpsed essential truths about each other. Ethan finds Emma and Claire in the executive dining room, heads bent together over what appears to be an impromptu drawing session on a cloth napkin. Emma looks up at his approach, her face brightening. Dad, Ms. Claire is teaching me how to draw beach houses for when we go to the beach again someday. That's wonderful, sweetheart, Ethan says, meeting Claire's gaze over Emma's head. But we need to get going now. Say thank you to Ms. Claire. Instead of a simple thank you, Emma surprises both adults by launching herself into Claire's arms for a fierce hug. I'll miss you, she whispers loudly enough for Ethan to hear. When we come back, will you still be here? Claire returns the embrace with equal emotion, her professional composure momentarily set aside. I'll be here, she promises, her voice thick with feeling. And I'll miss you too, Emma Morgan. The goodbye between Ethan and Claire is more restrained but no less meaningful. They stand slightly apart while Emma gathers her drawings. I can't tell you where we're going, Ethan begins. I know, Claire interrupts gently. Security protocols, I understand. But I wanted to say, he pauses, uncharacteristically uncertain of his words. What you did for Emma yesterday, trying to protect her in the safe room, that's something I won't forget. Claire's smile holds both warmth and sadness. She's special. You both are. A moment of charged silence follows, filled with things neither is ready to articulate. Possibilities interrupted by circumstances, connections formed under extraordinary pressure that might have evolved differently in ordinary times. When this is over, Ethan says finally, when we come back to New York, I'll be here, Claire repeats her promise to Emma, but her eyes hold Ethan's with deeper meaning. Take care of each other. Their departure from the building is conducted with security protocols that would impress even the most paranoid operative. Separate exits timing, coordinated to avoid predictable patterns, surveillance countermeasures that Donovan has personally overseen. By noon, Ethan and Emma are driving west in a nondescript sedan, provided by Jake Matthews, their few possessions in the trunk, new identification documents in Ethan's pocket. Emma watches the city recede in the rearview mirror, her expression thoughtful beyond her years. Dad, she asks as the skyline finally disappears from view, when we come back, can we go to the bookstore with Miss Claire again? The question carries innocent hope for future normalcy, for return rather than permanent disruption. Ethan reaches across to squeeze her hand gently. Yes, he promises, the word encompassing more than just the specific request. When we come back, we'll have plenty of time for bookstores, and beaches, and building sandcastles that don't get washed away. Emma smiles, satisfied with this vision of future possibility. I think Mom would like Miss Claire, she observes with 8-year-old directness. They both know how to make you smile even when you're trying not to. The observation strikes with unexpected accuracy, warming something in Ethan that has been cold for too long. You might be right about that, sweetheart. He acknowledges, his gaze fixed on the open road ahead, leading temporarily away from New York, but carrying the promise of eventual return, to safety, to new beginnings, to possibilities that neither father nor daughter could have imagined, when a single act of protection in a Manhattan restaurant set their lives on an entirely new course. The sedan continues west, carrying its passengers toward temporary sanctuary. Behind them in the city, they've left Claire Wilson steps out of Blackwood Tower and pauses to look up at the clear blue sky, the same sky that stretches above Ethan and Emma on their journey. Different locations, same universe. Separate paths, connected stories. She touches the bandage on her temple, a tangible reminder of 2 days that changed everything, then continues down the busy sidewalk with renewed purpose. There is work to be done, justice to ensure a path to prepare for eventual reunion. Some stories pause but don't end. Some journeys circle back to beginnings that look nothing like what came before. Some bonds once formed transcend distance and circumstance, waiting only for the right moment to continue their evolution. This is one such story, paused, not ended, to be continued.